Good afternoon and welcome everyone to this meeting of the Western Area Planning Committee, especially those members of the public who are watching the streaming online. I'm Councillor Clive Hooker and I will be acting as chairman of this planning committee this evening. The members of the committee joining me are Councillors Anthony Amerthraj, Adrian Abbs, Dennis Bennyworth, Billy Drummond, Nigel Foote, Denise Gaines, Howard Wollaston, and Tony Vickers. The officers attending and presenting the applications to the committee are Bob Dray, the Development Manager, Deborah Inston, the Team Leader Development Management, Matthew Shepherd, the Principal Planning Officer, Paul Goddard, the Highways Development Control Manager, Paul Backus, our Principal Engineer addressing studs, Daniel Phelan, the Economic Development Officer, Jenny Ray, the Principal Waste Officer, Russell Davison, the Senior Environmental Health Officer, and Sharon Armour will be my legal advisor this evening. Thomas Radbourne will clerk the meeting. I'm also assisted by Sam Chiverton, who will be the Zoom host. Before we start the meeting, I'd like to explain for the benefit of those watching that it is being held both by Zoom and with councillors present here in the council chamber. The meeting is also being streamed on YouTube so the public are able to follow the proceedings this evening. Before we start, please can I ask everyone present in the chamber to switch on their microphones when invited to speak directly into them and switch them off when they're finished. Can I also ask everyone in the chamber to turn their mobile phones to silent and turn off the sound on your laptops? Regarding our safety this evening, if we hear the fire alarm, we must leave the building immediately. Please leave via the safe emergency exit route, which will be shown to us by the trained officers present. Please follow any instructions given by those officers. The assembly point is the Dolphin car park opposite. If the lockdown alarm goes, we will remain seated and await instructions from officers. I will then adjourn the meeting until such time as it is safe to proceed. To be consistent with our council meetings, I'd like to remind members that we are subject to the council's code of conduct, which requires us to uphold certain standards, those being respectful to each other and to officers and members of the public present. Members may not always agree with one another or with the officer's recommendation, but I would ask that any disagreements, we are respectful of others' views and positions. Members, before we start the business this evening, as the application on our agenda is of great interest to the public due to the proposed change of character to the Kennet Centre in Newbury, I'd like to ask your views whether we should consider increasing the speaking time of our attenders from 5 minutes to 10 minutes. Would anybody like to make a suggestion, please? Councillor Gaines.
I'm happy to propose 10 minutes, Chairman.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councillor
I'm happy to propose that, Chairman.
Thank you. Mrs. Armour, would you just conduct the vote on that, please, for members?
So just to clarify, this is to suspend standing orders to allow everyone 10 minutes and then standing orders will resume as soon as the speaking element has finished. So can I have all those for the proposal, please? So I think that's unanimous.
Thank you. Then the speaking time will be increased for our speakers to 10 minutes. Should they require it? This isn't a challenge, it's just an option. Right, we'll now move on to item 1 of the agenda. Apologies. Mr. Radbourne, do we have any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies received from Councillor Phil Barnett with Councillor Billy Drummond in attendance as his substitute, and apologies received from Councillor Paul Dick with Councillor Bennyworth in attendance as his substitute.
Thank you very much. Item 2 of the agenda, members. Any declarations of interest, please, on this application? I'll start round with Councillor Abbs.
Yes, just to say I've been lobbied by various parties, both for and against the development.
Councillor Foote.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to say that I'm also a Newbury Town Councillor. I'm also Heritage Champion for West Berkshire Council, and I have been lobbied on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wollaston.
I've been lobbied on both sides, Jim.
Thank you. Councillor Bennyworth.
That's a ditto from me, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr Redbourne, could we have a microphone for Councillor Bennyworth, please? We seem to be microphone short. Councillor Vickers.
Yes, I'm also on Newbury Town Council Planning Highways Committee, but I haven't voted on this new application at all. Yes, that's it basically. I've been lobbied as well.
You've been lobbied, thank you. Councillor Drummond, no. Councillor Gaines.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, Councillor.
And I've been lobbied as well. And also I'm on Newbury Town Council as well. And I was at the Newbury Town Council planning meeting last week and I abstained from the vote and I will look at this matter afresh this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Gaines.
Yes, Chairman, I've been lobbied on this as well.
Thank you. Councillor Armour.
Yes, Chairman, just the usual lobby.
Yeah, and me also through various emails. Thank you very much. They'll be recorded. We now move on to item 3 of the agenda, the planning application. We just have the one application to consider this evening, and that is application number 25/00391/full, Newbury District Council. Just as an introduction and for members of the public attending in person or watching online and are unfamiliar with the meeting format, I will briefly outline the process of this application this evening. The officers will present the application to the committee. The drawings, site plans and any deemed relevant materials submitted on the planning file will be shown part of their presentation on the screens in the chamber and on your tablets and laptops at home. I will then invite the representatives from the following groups to come up to the lectern in front. My list of speakers does indicate that all speakers are in the chamber tonight, so there should not be a requirement to anyone attending on Zoom. Each group now will have 10 minutes to speak. The order of the presentations will be first up, Newbury Town Council, then any objectors, then any supporters, and then the applicant and the agent. On the conclusion of each of those submissions, I will ask members of the committee if they have any questions of clarification on that submission. Members will not be permitted to introduce new material in their questions. I will then invite the ward members to speak. They will also have 10 minutes to present their case. Committee members may then, at the conclusion of that presentation, ask questions of clarification. The committee members may then will then have the opportunity to ask questions of the officers' presentations, and tonight they may well be assisted by the other officers present. As you would have seen from my introduction, there are many officers from various disciplines here tonight to help. The committee will then debate the application and vote on the decision. Is everyone happy how the process will work this evening? Thank you. So the application before the committee this evening is application 25/00391/full, and it is for full planning permission for the redevelopment of the Kenwick Centre, comprising of the partial demolition of the existing building on site and the development of new residential dwellings, use class C3, and residence ancillary facilities. Commercial floor space, class E, A, B, C, D, E, F and G, access, parking and cycle parking, landscaping and open spaces, sustainable energy installations, associated works and alterations to the retained view cinema block, and an additional floor to be added to the multi-store car park. So that is the application, members, before us tonight. And this application has been called to committee due to the development manager considering its interest to the public in general. So first up this evening is our Principal Planning Officer, Matthew Shepherd. Mr. Shepherd, could you present the application to the committee, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So I won't repeat. The Chairman has already outlined what the proposal is, the reason for its coming to Planning Committee for you tonight. I will highlight that our recommendation as officers is approval subject to conditions and a legal agreement, or refusal should that legal agreement not be completed, as per the covering sheet in my committee report. The application is a full planning permission. The red line is shown here around the Kennet Centre. It's very similar to the previous application that was presented to the committee. The demolition plan shown here, the red hatched area is the Kennet Centre that will be removed. So you'll note at the bottom left and right of that image, the View Cinema complex is retained and the multi-storey car park is retained. The two sections of that plan in the middle are the two public houses on the site, and then I think the betting office is the one further north. Going through, so the application proposes 317 dwellings, so the layout plan is shown there on the ground floor. I do have access to some of the plans. They are rather large, so I will be able to enhance them if required. The proposal incorporates public realm, communal areas, private amenity space. The residential units are a mixture of private sale and build-to-rent units. There is the provision of 5 new flexible Class E, so commercial units around the north of the site. So along Bartholomew Street here are 4, one on the corner over on this side. There's a retention of the View Cinema, Kung Fu, and Nando's restaurants to the south of the site, and 2 reconfigured units at the back of that complex. There will be ancillary residential floor space comprising a community hub for any built-to-rent units on the site, so gym, meeting rooms, kitchens, and parcel rooms, etc. The proposed development includes an additional story on the Kennet multi-story. The scheme proposes the provision of 557 parking spaces. The site is within is brownfield land. It's in Newbury Town Centre Conservation Area. There are a number of listed buildings and considerations in terms of heritage that are covered in the report in far more detail. The committee report also outlines the history of the application. Just for a reminder, the previous application that went to appeal that was refused by this committee was for 427 residential units. The appeal can also be referenced in the pack as well. So showing you on to the next plan, just to show layout of the site in terms of public access. So some of these streets will be just for residents to access, and some will be free, so I could move through them. Any member of the public could move through them. So the lighter colours to the south, so the purple area, is all open streets that we could access 24/7. You can access through the lighter, so the blue and the green. These only have car barriers, etc. on there, so you could wander in there to have a look at the design and enjoy the proposed development. And then some of the smaller streets to the north, so those in orange, yellow, will be for residents only and controlled by the access. So that plan has been drawn up in quite close consultation with Thames Valley Police for secure by design reasons. Their response is covered in detail in the report. Just to show the street scenes, so these are the external of the proposed developments. We've got Cheap Street, Market Street. We can see the different public houses are probably the best way to anchor yourself in terms of where you are. We have the clock tower, the town hall, and the cinema across. We have the multi-storey car park down on the left-hand side. Just to show you, this plan shows the heights of the proposed development. So a lot of the blue and the lighter colours are first floor, second floor, third floor, and then as we move south through the development, we become higher and higher, so 4 and 5 stories, and roof gardens towards Market Street down on the south. I haven't sought to recreate and show you every plan on the file, luckily, so I've just taken a selection of some of the street scenes, working my way through the development south. So we have the Artist Muse. So these are ones at the north, so it just gives you a flavour of the design. So the greyed out elevations are internal, and the coloured ones are more of the external, so what you'd see from the street scene. So we move across to Eagle Yard, which is access off the marketplace. Falkland Place, so we're moving down the site again. This one comes in from Marketplace on the east side of the development. You can see here the different kind of levels we have in terms of amenity, the designs that we have, the building's proportions, and very much a Muse style of proposal. Smith's Yard, again, you see railings in areas, roof lights to denote more floor levels in the attics and different areas. We have this on Bartholomew Street at Alma Court. So on the top, we see from what we'd see externally, just down from the Newbury Public House, you can see the two vehicle accesses and the arches that are proposed. And then the grayed out image shows you the internal kind of elevation of that court. Again, Plenty's Place, showing you kind of the different proportions of the windows and the level of detail is secured. So we've got railings, we've got kind of the landscaping in there and the different design aspects of the through routes through the development. Further down, we see Cheap Street, so the top image is adjacent to the cinema. So you can see the height of the buildings there up to 5 stories, and the different designs that you have near to the Catherine Wheel, and that Plenty's Place is the image on the bottom of that, which will show you how it looks internally. This is Plenty's Place. As you enter in through Market Street, the proposal would be on the right-hand side. You can see iron yard elevation, so access, you have specific access to your flats and things like that, which is what's proposed within the development. Just a whistle-stop tour, we've got the proposed car park. So I've shown there the proposed elevations of the additional story on the car park, which is a metal mesh through. It looks slightly jarring in terms of the red that's shown there. So I've also shown the street scene of Market Street on the bottom left, just to show in a grey, in a silver colour, it will blend in a lot better than that bright red proposal that you have in front of you. So as I said, I have got access to all the plans that I can share. Hopefully we won't need too many, but I will do my best to pull those up. But that gives you a flavour of the design and what's being proposed. So if there's anything missing, we can cover those across. So turning to the report, I'll start with the consultation responses. So from the Republic, we have about 14 letters of contribution, 12 of which support, 2 of which object. They support the provision of housing, the design of the proposed development. There's concern in terms of some of the loss of the shops, some of the heights. The lack of affordable housing was also covered across. They're summarised in my report in more detail. Moving down to consultees, Newbury Town Council support the application but are disappointed by the lack of affordable housing. Active Travel England have issues with the lack of provision for cyclists in some of the areas, but accept the permeability has improved. Our transport policy officers are content with the proposed development, suggesting wayfinding signage in the planning obligation. Berkshire Fire and Rescue have raised no objections. Our archaeology officer, ecology and tree officers all raised no objections subject to conditions. Our economic development officer raises no objections subject to conditions and a planning obligation. It's notable Historic England and our conservation officers support the conservation-led design that's in front of you. The Environment Agency has no objections. The housing officer is concerned with the lack of affordable housing. Our environmental health officer raises no objections in terms of impacts from the public houses on the site and contamination issues. Just to highlight, Thames Valley Police had initially raised objections to the proposed development. They've worked closely with the applicants and their latest response raises no objections. They note that all the matters have, in their original comments, have been addressed. There are areas in terms of key fobs, keypad entry, that they're still concerned about, but that specific detail can be taken care of by planning condition. That's recommended in the planning documents. Newbury Society have welcomed the changes to the scheme, but outlined some concerns with the proposals. Our highways officers, drainage and waste officers offer their objections to the application. They're covered in more detail, and I'll speak a bit more on those, and the officers will also be here for questions. In terms of the principal development, we are in a sustainable location in a town centre on brownfield development. We're close to the railway, sustainable travel methods and everyday essentials. So it's, in terms of sustainability, it's a very good site. Policy SB1 notes that town centre schemes should be of an appropriate scale and character and respond to the function of the centre and support sustainable communities. SB1 seeks for Newbury to retain its traditional market town heritage and continue its role as a centre in West Berkshire. Policy SB3 of the development plan expects urban areas such as Newbury to be prime focus for housing and economic development. Part of the site lies within flood zone 2. The flooding sequential test must be passed in order for the development to be acceptable. The committee report outlines how the proposed development has passed that flooding sequential test. We haven't any concerns in terms of flooding from the Environment Agency, and there are concerns from our sustainable drainage officers on the application. Policy SB 18 states the council will try to maintain and enhance the vitality and viability of West Berkshire's town and district centres. The Kennet Centre is primary shopping frontage, and the proposed development does include the loss of commercial space, which to an extent is in conflict with SB 18. Despite this, the proposed development is broadly consistent with the strategic aims of the NPPF and the local plan. It supports highly sustainable development in town centres, making effective use of previously developed land and providing regeneration opportunities for Newbury. There is a loss of Class E floor space within the primary shopping frontage, which conflicts with Policy SB 18, but the policy does allow flexibility. Specifically, it permits changes to use in primary shopping frontages where the proposals do not lead to a disproportionate concentration of non-Class E commercial units that would harm the vitality of the town centre. In this case, the development retains a number of retail and commercial units around the site, and the introduction of new substantial residential population with the town centre is expected to generate increased footfall. This in turn is likely to boost demand for shops and services, amenities, therefore creating and supporting viability of the existing businesses and enhancing the vibrancy of the town centre. On balance, the report outlines that there is a degree of policy conflict in principle, but there are wider planning benefits, particularly in terms of regeneration, housing delivery, that comply with the principal policies in the development plan. Outlining the economic considerations which are important, the applicants have submitted an economic impact assessment. We, as council, have commissioned our own retail assessment through the Avison-Young report, which both reports outline a wide range of positive impacts. During the build period, estimates are around 200 jobs would be created in construction, rising to 266 in terms of indirect and induced employment in the area. The construction phase is projected to generate up to 18 million in regional gross value. Once operational, the scheme is anticipated to support 144 to 191 new additional full-time equivalent jobs across the commercial units, site management roles, and the wider town centre spending. It's estimated the proposed development would contribute circa 9 million into the West Berkshire economy, with around 2 million wages. The proposal is seeking to change the retail focus of the Kennet Centre into a residential scheme. It does accompany some commercial units. Some are proposed, some are retained. 10 are across the development site. Instead of retaining a large quantity of existing retail floor space, much of which has been persistently vacant or leased at low floor rents, the scheme introduces 317 homes with projected accommodation for 950 residents. This will obviously increase the local population, making a strong case for increased demands for shops, services, and amenities within the town centre, helping existing businesses to remain viable and increasing the vibrancy of the town centre via increased footfall. It is important, as the report outlines, to note the level of net reduction in commercial floor space from around 14,000 square metres to around 5,000 square metres. The Kennet Centre currently comprises 50 units, 16 which are vacant, 4 are being used for storage and warehouse style businesses, 10 are occupied under temporary leases, and 20 are occupied under the standard lease agreements. Whilst the loss of the existing units in the Kennet Centre is a shame, it is to a degree justified by the persistently high vacancy rates and market shifts and the evidence of low rental rates. It is a consideration for the committee tonight, the effect of the permanent loss of the Kennet Centre and what effect that would have in terms of the future flexibility of the town centre units, which may be constrained. This does present a risk if market demand for retail or leisure or office space rebounds over time. It is, however, notable that the inspector in the previous appeal did comment that the existing Kennet Centre is largely vacant, and it is a site where residential-led development should be targeted. So that's paragraph 100 of that previous decision. The economic development team are seeking contributions to Newbury bid and the council to develop strategies to reduce the level of vacant units in the town centre. Methods such as wrapping vacant store windows to reduce the negative effect vacant properties have, and promoting websites to help vacant units become occupied is the aim of the contribution that's covered in the heads of term. There is, in officers' opinion, there's a strong economic case for the redevelopment of this site to drive as an opportunity to drive regeneration within the town centre. Nevertheless, the scheme does involve a reduction in commercial floor space, and a balancing of the benefits has to be undertaken. Officers see the benefits outweigh the drawbacks. Turning to affordable housing, SB 16 requires 30% provision of affordable housing on brownfield development sites. The level of policy is the default and the starting point. However, a lower provision or no provision can be submitted if fully justified through a viability report. The applicant has submitted a viability report explaining that the site is not viable to deliver affordable housing. This has been assessed by has been presented by the applicant and has been tested by the council's consultant. The scheme has been tested in different ways to see whether build to sell, a traditional method, would generate viability, or build to rent could offer differing levels of viability, and whether it would develop a scheme that could deliver affordable housing. In a nutshell, on build to sell model, the gross development value is about 144 million. The total cost of delivering the scheme is 128 million. The developer return at 20% would equate to around 29 million, and the benchmark land value around 3 million. When delivering 100% private tenure mix, the scheme generates a residual land value of minus 12 million. It is, if a scheme results in a positive residual land value, the affordable housing comes out of that gain. In regard to the profit being at 20%, a high profit margin is not unusual for brownfield development of this size. It is within the range given on the planning practice guidance by the government. Again, testimony to how this has been tested by our consultants, a lesser level of profit would still produce a negative residual land value and would only increase the appetite from a developer/investor to deliver the scheme. It is notable that a lot of concrete will need to be removed from the site. It's not the constraints and the development of this site would be very complicated. For instance, a greenfield site may be viable because they can. It's just clearing the site is much easier on that side. In terms of SB 18, the proposed development makes allowance for viability arguments to be made to support no provision of affordable housing. The lack of affordable housing obviously weighs against the proposed development, which misses an important public benefit, but there isn't specifically conflict with policy SB 16. In terms of the design quality, the report describes how the design quality draws deeply on the historic urban grain and architectural character of Newbury. The exceptional design and quality of the scheme has been recognised more widely, with the chairman of Create Streets design practice and research group that advises community groups and councils on urban design, noting support for the development in 12.4 and 12.5 of the report. Their comments are listed. They describe it as very probably the best example of truly regenerative town centre development taking place anywhere in Britain today. They commend the alignment with sustainable urbanism, heritage sensitivity, community revitalisation, and the transformational opportunity for Newbury. Not only is there recognition from other parties, there is significant, the letters of support that the development has received expresses enthusiasm for the design and the contribution to the town centre. Newbury Society have praised the design quality, but they have some caveats and issues with some of the design. Historic England have offered their support for the heritage-led proposal. Officers conclude that in terms of the design, the proposal complies with the aims of the development plan, the national planning policy, and the national design guidance 2018. Delivers a high quality, locally distinctive and sustainable development that enhances Newbury Town Centre in our opinion. Moving to the historic environment, the Council Conservation Officer notes that the site is a significant opportunity to enhance the character of the area. It does this by reintroducing historic plot patterns, improving permeability, adopting an architectural form and materials that reflect the town's heritage, and a scheme that's sensitive and well considered in terms of the historic context. The reduction in building heights, particularly within the site core, and the thoughtful design of taller elements within Market Street and Cheap Streets help to mitigate visual impact and reinforce the town's fine urban grain. Historic England also support the proposed development. Moving to internal amenity, internal for future occupiers and neighbours existing in the town centre. Our environmental health officers don't raise objections or issues in terms of the public houses. All the units are designed to face away from these public houses, so noise breakout from music or people on the terrace it has been mitigated from the previous development. In terms of spacing and overlooking, the site is tightly constrained internally, but obscure glazing, shutters and orientation of buildings and the design features that have been proposed make the development acceptable. We're happy with the relationship externally to existing occupants of the town centre. The level of amenity space in terms of gardens and open space is below the council's supplementary plan guidance. The average size proposed is 19.5 square metres. This is double the previous scheme. It's notable by officers that appeal inspectors from the earliest scheme concluded that despite falling short of the guidance, the amenity space was acceptable in terms of its location, size and quality. There is a contribution as well in the heads of term to open space management. As such, officers don't raise objection in terms of amenity. I'll leave the highways section to our highways officer to discuss in a little bit more detail. The waste collection is another area of concern. This is covered in section 19 of the committee report. The council's waste management team has raised concerns about the current waste storage and collection arrangements. They are concerned insufficient container capacity in many bin stores, the poor accessibility of glass recycling boxes and failure to account for forthcoming regulations. There's also concern that the proposed layouts do not provide adequate space or access for users and collection crews from the council's crews. Furthermore, there's excessive carry distances for manual for streets for delivering waste to the public highway. To address these issues, the applicant proposes a private waste collection service managed by a management company on site. All residents will be members of this company who will oversee the waste services. The waste services will be secured by Section 106 agreement, so that's detailed in a little bit more. There's a little bit more in the update sheet in terms of updates to the heads of term. So you may want a private waste collection on page 4. Just outlines in a little bit more detail what we're seeking to secure. We have looked into securing private waste collection in terms of the wider picture. So Thames Quarter and Reading has a similar setup, and it is an accepted way forward by planning inspectorate as from the planning inspectorate, as shown in some of the decisions we've included in the agenda pack. While private waste collections does present a challenge, we are considered it is acceptable in terms of planning terms to secure private waste collection by legal agreement. The next area of concern is in terms of sustainable drainage. The SUDS officer has spent a significant amount of time reviewing the application documents and providing feedback to the applicant. The applicant has considered and taken on board this feedback and made efforts to address the feedback and improve the scheme. Despite the improvements, SUDS officers maintain their objection. The revised strategy submitted does not hit the discharge rates of national standards that came in whilst the application was being considered, and the design remains at a high level and lacks sufficient detail. The applicant's justification for some of its submission is that this is a heritage-led scheme and the SUDS needs to fit around the design and constraints of the site. This is something that's not agreed by the SUDS officer. Whilst planning officers do not seek to overrule constitutes lightly, officers recognise that the proposed drainage strategy, while not achieving surface water rates of national guidance, it would still result in a reduction in flood risk compared to the existing situation, which currently discharges surface water at an unrestricted rate into the public sewer. If fully implemented, the strategy would provide investment over the baseline. We've recommended comprehensive condition to secure delivery of a sustainable drainage strategy. And in light of this and the planning benefits, the scheme provides an improvement on the existing drainage situation. Officers are content a condition can secure the delivery of a robust SUDS strategy. Turning to sustainable construction, the new policy DM4 sets out different areas in which renewable energies need to be delivered, how new buildings need to be constructed in a sustainable way, and where they don't meet the levels of renewables and carbon on site, a planning obligation can be put in place to pick up to mitigate any shortfall of the proposed development. The development will also be required to meet BREEAM Excellent for the non-residential uses. This is shown for the shops. So where it can't be so the update sheet covers this in a little bit more detail. The conversations on this matter are still ongoing. Our consultants have reviewed the latest submissions that include solar panels and ground source heat pumps, and in terms of the fabric of the proposed buildings on site, there are concerns with the submitted details and some of the feasibility studies, but the advice we're receiving is that with a little bit more tweaking, a little bit more work, it can achieve the values that we need. And we can work out the mitigations through a condition and a Section 106 agreement, which would then deliver policy DM4. So that's something that's ongoing, and it has been including in the heads of term. It's a complicated and an emerging kind of area of the development plan, and the documents are very detailed in terms of view values and fabric first approach. So something we're working closely with, and the recommendation in terms of the conditions and the heads of term provide reassurance that we should comply with DM4. There are renewable energies, as I've noted, in terms of ground source heat pumps and solar panels that are trying to achieve the policy levels. Moving to ecology and trees, again, the site will improve ecology and trees of the site. There'll be a greater abundance of those. There'll be a biodiversity net gain and an increase in landscaping. So just to conclude, in terms of the planning balance, there are benefits officers perceive in terms of townscape and heritage enhancements. Obviously, the delivery of 317 new dwellings in a high sustainable location. There's economic regeneration, public realm improvements, and environmental enhancements such as renewable energies. That's been covered previously. Some aspects of the planning balance attract neutral weight in terms of SIL, developer contributions, parking provision on site, again, are in accordance with the policies presented. The lack of affordable housing is a significant missed opportunity. It's a shame it doesn't deliver any, but that is justified to an extent by the viability constraints that have been presented and reviewed by the independent assessment of the council. Private amenity space, again, falls short of the recommended standards in the RSPG, but inspectors have previously accepted a lower provision, saying it's quality rather than quantity that is important. The private waste collection introduces a difficulty in terms of the Section 106 agreement. We would prefer it to be council-led, but there are we can control this through a planning obligation and planning conditions, and that would satisfy the issues raised. In terms of the drainage strategy, it doesn't fully comply with the SUDS national standards. We are, however, dealing with abetment of the existing situation, and conditions can be utilised to control this harm. Overall, in the planning balance, when considered in the round, the public benefits of the proposal clearly outweigh the identified harms in the officer's view. The harms can be mitigated by conditions and planning obligations, as previously covered. The proposal is broadly consistent with the development plan. Where conflicts arise, material considerations justify departure from those development plan policies. Pages 89 and 90 of the agenda pack set out the heads of terms and the highways works and the monetary that will be contributed by our Section 106 agreement to provide mitigation and improvements to the highways through legal agreements. Again, as from the start, the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions and the completion of the Section 106 agreement. Just to turn to the update sheet, just to highlight a couple of areas that haven't already been spoken about. So there's the additional consultation response, our officers have made a comment on that came in on Monday. We've covered the energy and climate. There is recommended conditions and an additional condition. So to meet policy DM7, there's a maximum water consumption policy in accordance with DM7. BREEAM policy and the finished floor levels have been updated. The heads of term on the last page, so we've secured what the monetary fee is requested by the Newbury bid, so that's covered in there, the energy efficiency, and we've just covered private waste collections in a little bit more detail, what we'd look for in terms of section 106 and what we're trying to achieve with that planning obligation. That concludes my presentation, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd, for that most comprehensive presentation on this application. Members, the drawings went up. There is an awful lot of detail on there. I'm going to ask Mr. Chiverton if it's possible to have a full screen of those drawings. We were just getting a small. Can we enlarge on the screen and drop off the speaker when if any questions are asked? I'm quite happy for the drawings to go up as part of answering your questions later. But for the benefit of those people at home, I think the best size drawings and pictures would be an advantage. Is that possible, Mr.
Chairman, I have copies of the PDF, so if we have a specific plan, I can share that.
I'm just wondering about Mr. Goddard's presentation as well. He may well put some screen up. Can you do the same full screen for me, please? Yeah, thank you. I think that would help. Okay. So, Mr. Goddard, look forward to your presentation on the elements of this application, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Your highway officers have considered a number of issues for this planning application, and I will go through them one by one, broadly following on from pages 55 of your report. We'll cover traffic generation, access into the site, car parking, access for emergency vehicles, access for refuse vehicles, and the overall mitigation package that will come with the proposal. As with the previous proposal, there are no concerns regarding traffic generation. It is generally considered that the Kennet Shopping Centre, during its heyday, would have had a much higher traffic generation levels than the proposal that's before you. And we also consider that town centre shopping trends have changed over the years, and less people do seem to come into the town centre to shop. And therefore, there are no concerns regarding traffic generation. Of course, during construction, there will be construction traffic, but I am satisfied that this matter is covered by condition 29 within your committee report. I was wondering, Matthew, if I could have a site layout plan up, and then I can point out where the individual accesses are for the proposal that's before us tonight. That's it. Thank you very much. So the Kennet Centre multi-storey car park on the south west corner there is the ingress and egress into that is unchanged. There will be 5 accesses provided into the site. There are on Bartholomew Street side, there is a loop which is been called Alma Court. All the names on the plan are obviously unofficial at this stage. The proposal will need to go through all street naming and numbering processes, but at the moment it's been labelled as Alma Court. So there's an in and an out forming a loop there. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on, because in order to facilitate that, there will need to be changes to Bartholomew Street, including the relocation of the bollards. There is the main through route through the site called Plenty's Place, which is in from Market Street, right there, and is out onto Cheap Street, right there. And then we will need to relocate an existing bus stop further along Cheap Street to allow for that. And then there is a final access serving what has been described as Falkland Place, almost directly onto the existing Bear Lane, Cheap Street, Market Street traffic signal junction, adjacent to, where you can see it on the drawing, the Catherine Wheel public house. So a couple of these accesses have had some concerns for us. Can I have the next slide there, Matthew? That's the one. So this is the access onto Cheap Street. There's the existing traffic signal junction at Bear Lane, Cheap Street, Market Square. We were concerned regarding having an access directly onto that signal junction, not only because it's a signal junction, but also it's a very well used pedestrian crossings there. So we've worked on a solution with the applicants, highway consultants, and before you will be a replacement traffic signal junction that would include a fourth arm. That's the access into the site. And that would be accessed with a green signal when required. So it won't be included within the regular cycle. We've relocated, or will relocate, the pedestrian crossings, including fronting the Catherine Wheel public house, which has necessitated some footway widening there, which we welcome. Because that footway is being widened there, we need to sort of move the junction over slightly towards where the post office is in order to allow larger vehicles to turn along that corner there. So we're relatively happy with that design. There does need to be some tweaks to the access into the site to ensure it is clear for two-way traffic. And part of that access into the site will need to be adopted as public highway so we can put traffic signal paraphernalia upon it. The other access that is a point of concern is Market Street. And next slide there, Matthew. This is the main entrance to the site and is in only. And for it to be enforced, there is a series of barriers. I think there's still is to be decided what those barriers are going to be. They're shown as bollards there, but they could be something different. But either way, we were concerned that vehicles entering the site, if they weren't able to get in, would then have to reverse onto the busy Market Street. But I think you might be able to make out there a car can do a three-point turn in front of the barriers there. So we are content with that. Any larger vehicles turning up, such as a delivery vehicle, wouldn't be able to turn in front of the barrier. But I think we've taken the view that normally, if you have a delivery vehicle on the site, they're very much expected to be there. And adjacent that entrance there is the concierge office that will run the whole thing. So while it might not be ideal, we think it's acceptable with the provision of that turning there for cars. Also shown on that drawing is some lay-by parking that's being provided on Market Street, and that they will be controlled by appropriate traffic regulation orders, and they would be used by delivery vehicles for the cinema and for any retail units that there are along that frontage, and may be used also by clientele visiting the food outlets in the area during the evening. We think that might actually help businesses having a little bit of parking along there. So generally we are supportive of it, subject to appropriate traffic regulation orders, which the developer will help fund. So next slide, please. So I talked about the Bartholomew Street access earlier on, and because there are new accesses being provided north of the multi-storey car park, the existing bollards, the rising bollards that we have there for pedestrianisation would need to be moved some distance to the north. And that signal junction there would need to be replaced with a new junction. The central islands that you can see on there would be removed, and it'd be a 3-armed junction with crossings on each side. All these drawings that I'm showing you tonight will all need to be worked up in much detail during detailed design stage, and all the works will need to be provided by the developer through the Section 278 process. So moving on to car parking. Next slides, please. Yeah. So this was a big issue last time, I'm sure everyone will recall. But before us tonight, we have 210 flats and 107 houses, which, with our car parking standards set out in the local plan, require 406 car parking spaces. Of that, internally within the actual site, 80 car parking spaces have been provided amongst the houses and amongst the courts that are within the site. So that leaves the other 326 that are required to be provided within the multi-storey car park. Now, once again, there is a parking management plan that will be secured by condition. And currently it would be parking for residents and shoppers within the car park would be available on a first come, first served basis, but that will be secured with the car park management plan that's being provided. With the previous application, some extensive surveys were done of the existing use of the car park. And with our next slide, I think we'll go on to now. That's it. That shows you the car parking that is to be provided. It shows you the multi-storey car park, and it shows you all the parking on the different floors. Currently, there's 415 spaces within the multi-storey car park as it is. With the provision of the additional floor, in total it'd be 477. Again, we have those 80 car parking spaces around the site. So altogether, there's 557 car parking spaces provided around the site. In comparison with the previous planning application, there was 475 parking spaces, and there were 100 more residential units. So the balance, the equation has shifted quite fundamentally towards much more parking being provided than the previous proposal. As I began to mention just now, with the previous planning application, we did extensive surveys of the usage of the existing multi-storey car park. And it was found that during a typical weekday, the car park is only half full. Again, these sort of shopping trends that I mentioned at the start of my presentation. And at the weekends, it's about 2/3 full. But with that extra car parking, it is thought that at worst, there would still be over 250 spaces available on a busy Saturday that we consider is plenty for the proposal that is before you. The proposal complies with all parking standards for cycle storage, and there will need to be further work, in my view, on the provision of electric vehicle charging points through the site. But I consider that that can be secured by condition, and there is a condition included in the report. So next thing to think about was access by emergency vehicles. Now, the Royal Berkshire Fire and Rescue Service don't normally provide detailed comments at planning stage. They normally wait for building stage. But our role as highway officers is we check to ensure that a fire appliance can actually get into the site. And we are satisfied that through the main route through the site, a fire appliance can get to all areas within the development. There are two key dimensions to consider from the Manufacturer Streets. A fire appliance needs to get within 45 metres of the dwelling, can reverse 20 metres. So overall, that's 65 metres, and we're satisfied. that a fire appliance could get within the site. But overall, this is something that will be considered by the Royal Berkshire Fire and Rescue Service at building control stage. So as far as we're concerned, we've looked at it and taken this as far as we can go. Then we move on to access by refuse vehicles. I do have Jenny Ray, Principal Waste Officer, sat to my right here, who's available to answer questions on waste services. West Berkshire Council, as with all councils, is the statutory body for waste collection, and people pay their council taxes for that. And so we as highway officers, we check once again to ensure that refuse vehicles can get within the site, again within parameters set out by the government's Manual for Streets. We are satisfied at least that for the houses within the site, with the smaller bins, that refuse vehicles can reach all collectors if we are ever called upon to collect waste in the site, which being the statutory authority, that may be possible. The difficulty is, and our main concern is the inability for refuse vehicles to reach the larger bins for the flats. The four-wheeled bins, where Manual for Street states that they should only be wheeled at a maximum of 15 metres. Unfortunately, there are 5 locations within the site where that distance is more than 30. And there's one location where it is 63 metres. So that is a concern which we have not been able to resolve at this time. I'm aware of this issue with private waste collectors, but that is perhaps more for something for planning and waste colleagues to comment upon. There is a recommended framework and servicing plan condition 30, and there is a waste strategy contained within your update report that may assist in this issue. There is a further concern that we have regarding waste collection is that much of the refuse will be collected from the public highway. And this could have a couple of issues here, because if pedestrianisation is extended, as is proposed from 10 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock at night, and then onwards to 11 o'clock at night, that does reduce the available hours that refuse can be collected from site frontages. And what we would not want is refuse vehicles, for instance, collecting refuse from near traffic signal junctions at 8:30 on a Monday morning, for instance. But again, there is condition 30 there where these matters can be considered with the framework and servicing plan. So on to pages, and I've got another slide, Matthew, here, if you may. This is the overall mitigation packages. So there's the new traffic signal junctions that I've mentioned at Bear Lane, Cheap Street, Market Street, and Bartholomew Street, Market Street. Bartholomew Street fronting the site in order to facilitate the new accesses being provided that I mentioned would need to be resurfaced. There is also going to be a two-way cycle route along Bartholomew Street from Market Street to Mansion House Street. At the moment, it's only one way, but with the changes to the traffic regulation order, it can be then made two-way. As a precaution to ensure that there is sufficient car parking in the vicinity, there is the nearby Market Street multi-storey car park that, as with the previous proposal, £70,000 is going to be provided to improve pedestrian routes to that car park and within it to make it more user-friendly for all, including shoppers. There will also, of course, need to be resurfacing of footways fronting the site, particularly after construction. And just hidden there in green is a comprehensive travel plan. And there's more details of all this mitigation on pages 89 and 90 of your report. It's all listed there in detail. So in conclusion, as far as your officers are concerned, most of the environment and transport issues and highway issues have been resolved, but we share concerns with our waste colleagues regarding some aspects of waste collection within the site, and when statutorily required to do so, our refuse vehicles would not be able to reach some of the stores for the larger stores for the flats. That concludes my presentation, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard, for your detailed presentation as well. Members, of my introduction, we now come on to the presentations of our attendees this evening. And the first to make our presentation to us is the Town Council. And I'd like to welcome Councillor Roger Honeyman. Good evening, Councillor. I'm so pleased you can join us.
Thank you very much.
I'll just one moment, if you would. We've just got somebody who's taking water break. Thanks. Councillor, as we said, you may not be quite prepared for 10 minutes, but
well, I'm not prepared for 10 minutes. You're going to get somewhat less.
But I'm sure as a councillor, you will find a way of putting some words together.
I'm sure the other councillors here may ask questions as well, perhaps.
Be disappointed if you did. Right, we're all back in place.
Thank you very much.
When you're ready, please go. Thank you.
Newbury Town Council, the meeting of its Planning and Highways Committee on the 1st of September, expressed support for this application. Members were particularly pleased to note a much reduced impact on the town centre conservation area over the refused Eagle Quarter scheme. And members also noted that Historic England supports this application and they fully endorse the comments made in their report. They also noted, a lot of noting going on here, that the Conservation Officer supports the scheme. Members like the variety of building styles and the attention to detail shown throughout the scheme. However, we noted the appeal inspector's remarks in para 29 of the Eagle Quarter inquiry, where he states that the building heights in the area range from 2 to 5 stories, with Weaver's Yard reaching 5, and that in para 35 he notes that the conservation area appraisal and management plan, it is clear that the maximum building height is 5 stories in this area. In view of this, members felt that the height of the proposed buildings facing Market Street was still too high at 19.8 metres and could be overbearing. They would like to see the heights reduced together with changes to the facades to make them more typical of our local architecture. Members were also concerned about the bulk of these two buildings. The Town Council is always concerned that some affordable housing is included in any town centre schemes. This was successfully done in the Parkway scheme some years ago, facilitated in part by using some off-site contributions held by West Berkshire Council at the time. This scheme does not include affordable housing, and we would urge the developers and West Berkshire Council to work together to provide at least some affordable housing in the scheme, or failing that, an off-site contribution towards it. We note the comments of the housing officer and support his suggestion that a council-appointed consultant should test the viability based on a build-to-rent at 20% discount from market rent, and advise whether the viability could or should be tested over a longer return on the investment period, which it currently is not. We note that number 9 of the proposed conditions, should the application be approved, is a requirement for affordable housing viability review. The private amenity space per unit has been much improved over that in the refused scheme. It now amounts to over 19 square metres per unit, up from about 13 square metres. This still falls short of the recommendations. We agree with the officer report that this is mitigated by the town centre location and access to the nearby public open spaces. Section 16 and 17 of the report refers, and in this regard, the town council notes that in the proposed section 106 agreement, the sum of £52,738 is payable prior to commencement of the works for the provision, maintenance and improvements to the public open space. Victoria Park, being one of the nearest public open spaces to this scheme, is the responsibility of Newbury Town Council, and we would welcome the contribution to enhance its amenity offering to the new residents. Further, we note in condition 33, there is a requirement for a parking management scheme to be submitted and approved. We would like to be consulted in this process. In conclusion, the Town Council fully supports this application, considering it to be a significant improvement over earlier proposals. That is the end of my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Honeyman. Members, do we have any questions of Councillor Honeyman, please? No, we all seem very,
Thank you very much.
happy and pleased with what we've heard this evening. Thank you so much. We now come on to our objectors this evening, and Mr. Richard Tate. Mr. Tate, would you come up to the lectern, please?
He's being promoted on Zoom now.
Ah, so he is coming on Zoom. Okay, thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, hello? No? Okay. Hello?
He's, yeah,
Can you hear me?
Good evening, Mr. Tate. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Can you just check that you've turned your camera on? We can't see you. We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can turn my camera on.
Fine looking chap. But there we are. Good evening, sir, and welcome to the Western Area Planning meeting here. This evening we've suspended standing orders and we've increased our speaking time from 5 minutes to 10. You may not be prepared for that, but if you would, I'll just get myself organised here. When you're ready, you do have 10 minutes should you require it. When you're ready. Thank you.
Be much shorter than that. Yeah, so I just wanted to raise concerns about the retail report that have been published by the developers. So that report is quite old, it's from a year ago, and much of the properties that are listed as vacant in that report are now being actively developed or have shops in them or have applications in to have new tenants. So yeah, I question whether that report is particularly valid and think that a little bit more analysis would need to be done looking at the evolution of retail tenants over the duration of the past year or so to actually give a proper reflection of how retail is faring in the town centre. I'd also like to have concerns with the fact that the addition of the entryway off Market Square will mean that there's a bit more of a divide between the north and south sides of the town, and it will inevitably provide a bit more of a barrier to footfall. So yeah, I think that it's potentially just it's something that needs to be looked at. The addition of a lot of housing in the town centre will divide the town centre itself, and it will mean that the town centre as a whole doesn't doesn't grow and doesn't thrive as a whole, and that there'll be various different pockets of activity, and it risks part of the town falling behind a little bit. So yeah, that's my concerns in a nutshell that I just wanted to raise.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. If you could just hang on one moment, there may be some questions from the members of the committee, and that there is. Councillor Vickers would like to ask you a question.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. I mean, I did read your submission of objection, but my questions have got to be limited to clarification on what you said to us just now. You talked about barrier to footfall, and you mentioned the entrance being off Marketplace.
Yeah.
Could you clarify that? Because the only vehicular entrance is off Market Street or off the very north end of Cheap Street or Bartholomew Street. I think you were talking about pedestrian through routes, were you? When you were saying that's changed and lack of footfall? Footfall normally means pedestrians, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, I'm talking the fact that you have to now cross what will affect. Yeah, there'll be a pedestrian crossing where there used to be none. So it'll just add a bit more of a barrier for people travelling throughout town, and we know that there's already a bit of an imbalance of footfall. So.
You mean north-south footfall, Mr. Tate, rather than east-west? Yes, that's what I thought. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any more questions? No, we have no more questions for you, Mr. Tate. Thank you very much for attending this evening.
Thank you.
We now, all good? Yep. We now move on to supporters. We've got nobody who wants to speak and support the application this evening. So we now come on to the applicant and the agent. This evening we have Mr. Hugo Haig, Miss Sarah Ballantyne Way, and Mr. Richard Farley. Ladies and gentlemen, you have 10 minutes if you'd like to come up to the lectern. Turn your microphone on.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I've also got two colleagues with me. They're on the list to speak as well. That's Sarah Ballantyne Way, who's Loch Islet's planning director. So any planning related questions that you may have that you want to ask us, she's here to field those questions. And likewise, we've also got Richard Farley. And Richard Farley is the manager of the Kennet Centre and has been there for a long time. He's the author of some of the retail reports that we have submitted in relation to the retail, especially the updated retail report.
I'll just stop you there. Thank you for the introduction. When you're ready to do your presentation, let me know and I'll start. Then everybody's had a fair hearing. But I appreciate your introduction of your team here this evening.
Certainly. Thank you. So let's go back to the beginning, because obviously this is against the backdrop of Eagle Quarter 1, 2, 3, for which there were several. And during that process, it came clear that there was a lot of concern about maybe the Eagle Quarter wasn't the right sort of scheme for the site. So in the background, we took away these concerns and took another architect on board and to see if we could address them. And we went back to the roots, and the roots of this site, it's the heritage. We're in a conservation area. It's a medieval core to a degree of Newbury, or was, and there's some very old streets, and we took our design ethos and guidance for the typology of the scheme from them. And so when we have a heritage-based scheme, obviously there has to be some compromises, because otherwise we just can't make the heritage stand up and be authentic for what it is. So things like bin stores, we have bin stores scattered around the site and so on, but it is always, and fundamentally from the outset, was designed to be a privately run service for our scheme. So it's not an afterthought. And I think quite rightly, that can be addressed by condition. It's a brownfield site, we all know that. And with brownfield sites come a whole host of difficulties from a redevelopment point of view, from a demolition point of view. And we've also lost 100 odd units. We were 427 units, we're now 317. And so the viability, from a viability standpoint, gets worse rather than better. The bill cost for the scheme, pro rata, has gone up, and I don't know if you had spotted that in the viabilities, but it's an expensive scheme. The heritage element obviously costs money. There's quite a lot of railings, for example. Those railings are about 1.3 million of railings that go on all different designs. They're not all standard. You know, it was Eagle Ironworks, and it's appropriate to be putting this type of heritage element into the housing. Retail, what was very interesting, and we were very keen on the through New Street in Eagle Quarter. You know, we felt that had great benefits for Newbury, but funnily enough, the inspector in his recent decision gave it little weight, and that street had a whole lot of new shops in it. He had no concerns at all about the retail element, and doesn't mention it in his report. He just says that he thinks the site's appropriate for housing. When it comes to affordable housing, we've just touched on this a little bit about affordability, but we will have a revaluation clause in the 106. So it will be revalued, I think, when it's 75% occupied, approximately, something like that. And if we can make a contribution towards affordable housing, we will. And I'd like to answer any questions you may have.
That's your presentation for us this evening. Thank you. Members, any questions, please? Councillor Vickers.
Yeah, Mr. Haig, you talked about trying to recreate a medieval core on very old streets, and you were very keen on the Eagle Quarter's new street. And I must say, many of us were delighted when we saw what you were proposing, but somewhat dismayed as we saw the secure by design changes coming through. So what's your personal view of the changes that are being forced on us in terms of taking away that permeability that in the medieval and old streets there was, and which still is there in the area of Newbury that I live in, where people don't mind, strangers walking past your front door within 3 meters.
No.
So that's my question. What's your view about the changes imposed on us, it would seem, by the police?
The southernmost part of the scheme is quite permeable. It's the northern part of the scheme that becomes less permeable, where they are just pedestrian courtyards and mews houses around a courtyard there. One of the slightly frustrating things, we had these, what I call very pretty gates designed for those courtyards, and they were 1.6 meters high, so not imposing, didn't make it look like a fortress, and yet secured by designs come back and said, no, these gates have to be a minimum. The book says 1.8 meters high. Well, they would have been a variety of things. So not, it's slightly frustrating to have to make it bigger, make it more like prison. Not that it is going to be a prison, but it's ridiculous. Jumping over a 1.8 meter high fence is probably not on the cards anyway. So disappointing. But these courtyards, you can go into them and come out, but you can't really they don't lead anywhere else. Only the residents can go north, south, or there's a whole series of coding and locks and gates.
Can I have a supplementary to that? So in a nutshell.
I'll just come in first. Yeah. Members, Mr. Haig's presentation was very open. It wasn't specific to the planning application that's before us. So normally, as you know, we can only ask questions on what he's presented. So I'm going to take some advice from my legal advisor here, but my request will be, as it was such an open and I won't say vague, but overview, not specific, it almost leaves us as a committee difficult to ask a question. So I'd like to ask the question of the legal, can we have an open house to ask open questions?
Well, questions are supposed to be to clarification. So, for example, the railings were mentioned. So that is kind of linked to.
No, I'm going back before
design.
that. The presentation on the application was general. It wasn't I thought that one could come back and ask questions on any specific part of the application that's been put
So,
before.
but I thought it was in some ways in terms of the railings were mentioned, and so that kind of links to security by design. I mean, something like highways wasn't mentioned, so if anyone had a highways question, they probably couldn't ask it because there was nothing presented about highways. But I don't know what Councillor Vickers' next question is, but I thought the first one was linked to what was presented. I can see some planning officers nodding.
Okay, I
don't know what the second one is, but
I just want officers to feel, members to feel that it's a bit wider subject that we can ask questions on. Councillor Bennyworth, you're prompting me here. I have two before you. I've got Councillor Wollaston and then Councillor Abbs, unless you'd like to have something specific.
Sorry, can I just add also, obviously there's an opportunity to ask officers questions. So if members feel that there are pressing questions. I think Councillor Vickers had another supplementary.
He does indeed, but I just want to make that clear. Is everybody happy that I brought that subject up? And you all feel that you've got enough material there to ask Mr. Haig your questions?
I'm happy if Councillor Bennyworth comes in because apparently his point is related to the point I made. So if I can come back after that, that'd be great, if necessary.
I'm very grateful to you, Councillor Vickers, Chairman also. I'm just wondering, I do feel rather shortchanged by that, Mr. Haig. I do apologise. I'm wondering, we have two other potential speakers for the applicant stroke agent. Is it possible that we can hear, I mean, Mr. Haig only got through a brief moment of his 10 minutes. Is it possible that they could possibly give a little insight as to their reason for being
well, it wasn't a part of the presentation, and he said that concluded his presentation, and therefore I suggest that was as presented to us. That was his opportunity. So, and I think earlier it was there to assist in questions. So no.
Shall I continue with that supplementary then, Chairman?
If you would, please, Councillor.
I mean, what you were saying led me to believe that you would have no objection if members tonight asked for the design for streets condition to be somewhat relaxed.
I'd welcome it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wollaston.
Yeah, I'm going to just clarify, we did have a retail comment, I think, in the presentation, because my question is to do with retail.
Okay.
I know when we last went through the presentation on the Eagle Quarter, you were saying that the existing retail content of the Kennet Centre was being subsidised dramatically to the extent that most of the tenants were actually on no rent. I just wonder whether that's still the case.
That's still the case.
Thank you.
You'd like to answer the question?
No, I've answered it.
Oh, you have? Well, that was it, was it?
It was very short.
Very brief this evening, Mr. Haig. Councillor Abbs.
Yes, in the 20 or 30 words that you use, I've got one, bin stores. Thankfully, you mentioned them. At the moment, in the Kennet Centre, you have the expert here as well. I believe the Globe has its bins on the first floor, and by some kind of covenant or access with arrangement with you to basically have them emptied, because essentially they're a pub. They've got very large bins, and therefore the only kind of way to get them off site successfully is for the lorries to drive up the ramp, grab them, and take them away. In the new design, I see a fire escape coming down from that area. I see no bins, no alleyway, nothing. Is it part of the scheme I've missed?
No, you're right. We have an informal arrangement for the Globe. We let them put their bins on our deck. They don't have a legal right to do that, and obviously we want to work with them. What they have a legal right is that access way that is a pedestrian fire escape across our deck, which obviously we maintain on the new plans, and you go down some steps and then out into our scheme. It's not for refuse.
Yeah, so to be clear then, the Globe will lose, because there is no provision for it in the new design, any way of storing any of their large bins.
They'll have to put them in the street like everybody else does.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Foot.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. I think you mentioned heritage in your presentation. And my question to you, Mr. Haig, for the committee really is, could you clarify, you might have remembered that the Newbury Society mentioned specifically the 6-storey buildings that front onto Market Street. And they acknowledged that, you know, as we all do, that clearly there are differences, significant differences to the Eagle Quarter scheme. But one of the things they mentioned was to maybe step back those buildings, if they can't be reduced in height, to sort of soften the effect on that. Could you just tell the committee if there's any scope for any anything like that in your design or not? Thanks.
Certainly. Well, the design in terms of density, when you look at the scheme, is obviously housing, predominantly housing in the northern section, and then it rises in height to the south. And we have 2 jobs that we have to do, which is to clad both the multi-storey car park and the View Cinema. In the public consultations that we did, one of the things that came up was it was going to be, they were all brick, and they wanted more render. So we tried to break up the massing by the use of more render on the elevations onto Market Street, and hopefully that will help.
Yeah, if you got a supplementary, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just one supplementary. On the drawings, you have in quite large lettering running sort of vertically down the buildings, the name of the buildings. Is it possible, you know, were the committee to accept this, that they could be altered so they're not quite okay.
Absolutely, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gaines.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Haig. You said from the outset waste was going to be private, was going to be privately controlled. Did you ever consider, given the waste officers and the highways officers, sort of worries about waste being collected from some of those units, did you ever think about actually changing the plans in order to meet their requirements?
Because the answer is there was a bin strategy submitted with the application right from the outset, where we illustrate that we will be using a private management system to deal with the waste. And so by doing so, if any of these waste areas, you know, the bin stores become too full, we will just get another collection in that week and manage it as necessary, and that will be covered by condition.
That's a supplementary. I'm going to be very, very cheeky now and ask you a supplementary about the people, the residents. Do you think it's fair if they have to pay for the council tax and the statutory duty of us as a council to provide the waste strategy, and now they're going to have to pay again as residents?
I'm afraid it's common practice on some of our schemes where they have to pay twice. You know, it's covered in the service charge. The reality here, though, is that when you have a sufficient critical mass of people contributing to that service charge, it actually makes it quite affordable. And it's about efficiency, and it's very much part of the scheme. We couldn't do the heritage element. We couldn't make it a heritage scheme if we had massive bin stores and we could get waste trucks through part of the site. It's not going to work. You know, we've got a town centre scheme where this is the only solution, and it's one that's been designed in from the outset.
Thank you.
Thanks to Councillor Gaines. Councillor Drummond.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't suppose I'm going to get to answer my question. My hearing's got a little bit in my old age, but Mr. Haig, you didn't mention heating by any chance, did you, in your presentation?
I might have.
Then I'll take that as a question.
Can I follow up that? Are you still planning on putting in the ground source heat pumps in?
Yes, absolutely. And part of these access points, and you can see if you go the Cheap Street access has only 6 houses that have cars that will use that access, but it also has the servicing to the ground source heat pump. And there are distribution points as marked on the layout plan. They're marked light pink. Matthew wants to bring them up. But the fact is, we need to get service vehicles in to look after them.
Because I liked your presentation you gave 3 weeks ago when you said it costs roughly £500 a year for the heating bill.
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Bennyworth.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Gaines.
Sorry?
Councillor Gaines beat me to it.
Oh,
Thank
okay. Councillor Amlathraj.
Thank you, Chairman. I was not going to ask a question because it was not covered, but thank you, Mr. Hague. You covered in one of the answers. Regarding the service charges, my question to you is, as a landowner, would you be considering in the future handing over that service management to the residents association or someone from the residents itself instead of a company? Because we know, the management companies are free to charge whatever they want in the future, and they keep increasing the charges without having the residents having any control of it. So would you be happy to have that proposition considered along with officers if we put some conditions?
You're straying a bit here, actually, Councillor. You don't actually need to answer that question. It wasn't a part of your presentation, most definitely. But if you feel that a very short answer, I'll accept.
If we can, we will.
That'll do. Thank you. Councillor Vickers.
You may say the same to me, Chairman, but it's arising out of the answer that Mr. Hague gave to Councillor Gaines that I had, if you like, another supplementary, because I think this is a major issue for, for many of us. Do you, Mr. Hague, consider a kind of a hybrid solution? My concern is that, all that recycling from these residential properties may not, through your private management company, end up at Padworth and be treated with the rest of the recycling, if you like, waste streams. I don't know. I mean, I'll ask the question of our waste officer as well, but it does concern me that that might, in effect, get some of the value from their council tax going to the residents. This is there are practicalities, but in terms of the cost, I think that would sort of sweeten the pill a bit if there was at least some value in that respect through a negotiation, because you are, in fact, municipal waste, whether it's privately collected or collected through the council's contractor, and it should be able to go through the same waste streams, I would have thought, as the council's own collections by Veolia.
Correct, and we've spoken to Veolia and see if they can do, if they're happy to it. And of course, they'd be delighted to do the waste on a private arrangement for,
Could I just ask that one of the planning officers to come in on this, please, and just explain a little bit more detail on the waste with regard to the S106 and how details that goes? With this question, because otherwise we might get more questions on waste, and it might be that we can say that that will be dealt with at another time.
I'm happy to ask officers that. I think we've got enough to go on with questions to officers, Chairman.
Okay, we'll bring it up at that stage, but I just wondered if any more questions on waste? No. Any more questions, members? No, thank you very much, Mr. Hague. We now come on to our ward members. We've got Councillor Sturgis and Councillor Coulston. I can't see them in the chamber, so are they coming on Zoom? Oh, they were there. Oh, they were over there. Sorry, I do. Councillor Sturgis, nice to see you. I do apologise.
Thank you, Chair.
As you say, we have 10 minutes now, so I don't know if you need full 10 minutes, but I will give you notification with a minute to go if you're planned for 10.
No, I won't. And Councillor Colston sends his apologies as well.
Thank you.
So thank you, members of the committee. So I'll start by saying that my inbox has been remarkably quiet on this application when compared to the last one. I've also seen on the planning portal and in the reports that the majority of comments received have also been in support. I think this says something about how residents feel about this scheme, and overall it is a marked improvement. The scale has been significantly reduced, and this is very welcome. I also want to acknowledge the care, attention and work that has clearly gone into the design. The effort to reflect the character and heritage of Newbury is obvious and will help the development sit much more comfortably in its surroundings if members are minded to approve the application this evening. There are, however, still a couple of places where the buildings remain high along Market Street and Cheap Street, and ideally those would be reduced further to better align with the scale of the majority of the town. On the commercial and retail side, I note there will be a major reduction in retail and commercial space from approximately 4,900 square metres to 5,200 square metres, which officers have said poses a risk to long-term flexibility and town centre vibrancy. I would therefore ask that the recommendations made by the Economic Development team are taken on board, which include providing the additional commercial spaces onto Marketplace and ensuring ground floor commercial units are of a flexible use class with lease terms attractive to independent, local or service-based occupiers. I also hope the applicant will fulfil the request for £35,000 for Newbury bid in the updated heads of terms. One area that is still disappointing for me is the lack of affordable housing. We know there is significant need across West Berkshire, and it is frustrating not to see that reflected here. I would really like this to be looked at again to see if provision could indeed be made. However, taken as a whole, I think this proposal represents a huge step forward. I welcome the progress that has been made and would like to see members support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Questions? Councillor Abbs.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Given we can only approve what's in front of us this evening or refuse it, we don't have a chance to change the plan, so we can either approve. And given that you said that who you represent say that they don't like some of the buildings still, they're too high, and in fact others have made the same comment as well. What's your advice to us as a committee then? Consider that we can't alter the plan. We can either only approve or disapprove of it.
Well, it's a very tricky decision for people to make, and obviously it needs to be a balanced decision. So that's really up to committee members, Councillor Abbs.
You're happy either way then?
I'd leave that decision up to committee members. Thank you.
Very diplomatic. Any more questions of the councillor? No. Thank you, Councillor Sturgis. Right, members, it's time now to ask questions of our officers. Councillor Absan went up straight away. And yeah, we'll go there in a minute. So, Councillor Abs, over to you. If you just might like to indicate who you'd like to answer the question. Highways, and then maybe officers, if you need to delegate that question down to the other officers representing those different departments, please do so. So let me just get this. So we got Councillor Abs to start with. Can I have a second? Amithiraj and Drummond to start with.
Thank you. I'd like to talk to the economics officer or question the economics officer first. I'll quite happily relinquish the floor and let others ask them because I'm sure there's a series of questions.
That's quite fine.
In it, page 16 of the report, someone wrote, which I assume is yourself, sir, strong economic impact during construction and operation. And I believe you're relating that back to the fact that there'll be some construction jobs in the town. However, during construction, there'll surely, and maybe you can clarify this, but won't there be quite a lot of negative impact from the construction in terms of all of the surrounding businesses across the road, the 20-odd that will be turfed out of the Kennet Centre, places like the Globe, which will suddenly won't have anywhere to put the bins except on the street and so on and so on. So when you say strong economic impact, why is it only the positive I see here? Where's the opposing part of the equation?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. Yes, there is a strong case for economic benefits, the employment that comes from the construction. And there will be negatives that will be impacted upon the businesses, the street access, the footfall will be impacted negatively. But overall, as you can see from the report, it is a very significant figure that benefits from the construction and the wider impact. So from that point, overall, we've seen it as a positive.
Could you give me a number though? Because
well, I can't make up a number for you.
Well, there's one in here. It says 9 million.
That's from the developer's contract.
Okay,
yes.
A number has been given of 9 million over the lifetime, which I believe is 4 years. from demolition through construction, so just over 2 million a year, or just around 2 million a year. You know, if I lose one parking space or 10 parking spaces, I can easily come up with that kind of number in terms of lost retail revenue. So strong case. I'm trying to get to this strong case, which I hope is true, but I'm slightly worried, as you can tell by my questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Amathraj.
Thank you, Chairman. Would it be possible for me to, I have a couple of questions, so would it be possible to come back? Okay. So my first question to Case Officer Mr. Shepherd on the access part, on the map you showed us explaining which part of the development would be accessible to the public. We call it permeability of the Councillor Vickers highlighted. I have a question on roughly looking at the map. There is no number, but just from
Would you like the map put up?
Yes, please. Yeah, if that helps. Thank you, Chairman.
And do you want to draw in on any particular area?
The other one, that shows the purple thing. That's the one. Okay, so, okay, thank you. So roughly looking at the map, it looks like roughly half of the development would not be accessible. So I'm looking at all the positives of this development, but looking at this one, it looks to me that what is now accessible as a Kennett Centre, there is no restriction to access within the Kennett Centre. So it looks like after this development comes up, roughly 50% of that development would be inaccessible, and it would mean that it's privileged access to only certain section of that development to certain. So my question is, I'm not making a comment, I'm coming to the question, what additional steps have been considered by the officers in accordance with the Thames Valley Police to just address this point about accessibility, to make the whole development access for the public instead of just putting the gates and all this? That's number one question. And then the other question related to
let's deal with the first one, please.
So I think the starting point would be the Kennett Centre is not freely available all the time. It shuts during the night. I can't access down the main street, the main boulevard within the Kennett Centre during that time. So there is some restrictions to permeability outside of operating hours. In terms of what's being presented in this application, so we have the purple area around in Plenty's Place through Ashton Thicket is something that's accessible throughout all the time. I could walk through there during day and night. You've got the smaller areas, Ashton Court, Victoria Court, which will be behind barriered access. So these are more of the residential areas that I wouldn't be able to access in the same way as I can't access the roofscape of Parkway. That's private amenity space for people who live there. If I wanted to wander into Alma Court and through and back through, that's open as well. It's only bollarded on different sides. I can't then access through the whole site into the rest of it to increase permeability. And this is something that's then represented in Falkland Place. I could wander in from Bear Lane, Cheap Street to have to enjoy the development if approved. But areas like Crown Court, Artists Muse, which are smaller and have more of those smaller corners and things like that, which then leads me on to Thames Valley Police's objection. When this came in, it was completely open and you could access throughout the site. That is obviously not what Thames Valley Police have negotiated with the applicants. Take, for instance, this Ginnell through the centre. If you were to wander through that at 10 o'clock at night on a summer's evening when it's getting dark, this promotes opportunities, if it was accessible to absolutely everybody, for crime and instances of antisocial behaviour and things like that. That's what Thames Valley Police are trying to avoid by restricting the accessibility and permeability through the site. So it's a balance between, we'd love to see the site as open and accessible all the way through and increase permeability, but Thames Valley Police advise they're concerned by the crime and the issues that might create in the future. But then we also look at the inspector's decision on the previous application, and he didn't give great weight to the main street through the middle of the development. He said there was two adequate passageways, Bartholomew Street and Cheap Street, that would adequately serve the town centre. So we also took that factor into consideration, that permeability, whilst increased, isn't as good as it could be, but also then deals with Thames Valley Police, who's a statutory constitutee, and their concerns.
Are you happy with that? Happy with that answer? Your second question, please.
I'm fairly happy with that explanation, but I think Mr. Shepherd didn't explain the measures because, to be fair to Thames Valley
Second
Police,
question, please.
would it be possible for officers to consider, since applicant answered our question that they would be happy to consider any provision to make it more accessible, more permeable, would officers would be considered to relook at this particular design, that particular ginnel? That's the choke point, because that choke point, if it is removed or widened or whatever measure, then there would be a west-east and east-west access from Bartholomew to the Cheap Street. So would it be possible for officers to consider that one in the future?
So in terms of the design itself, we have to look at the application as presented. A design of winding there would constitute kind of removing a residential property or reducing that down. And there's a number of these throughout. So you're looking at losing dwellings throughout. So the design implications are quite extreme from changing those. The only kind of thing we could suggest to revisit would be the condition on the security management and opening up those at certain times, if that's what you want to stipulate as councillors. But we would then make you aware of that might raise concerns with Thames Valley Police and go against their advice and what they've looked at. So you may want to look at adjusting the security measures, the times the gates open, or the sizes of the gates and things like that. But a redesign to open it up to make it a passageway or more of a bigger street is not something we could do within the gift of this application at committee at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. Thank you, Chairman. I'll come to the other questions later.
Thank you. Mr. Dre, did you want to come in there?
I was just going to add, thank you, Chairman, that condition 39 on page 82 that relates to that, if there is a steer from committee in that direction, it does allow for the details to be reserved for later consideration anyway. So if there is scope within that for it to be further exploration via condition, obviously we're not going to looking at fundamentally redesigning, not redesigning part of the scheme, but in terms of the precise details of what gates are controlled, it may be permissible under that condition.
Thank you for that, Mr. Dre. Councillor Drummond.
Thank you, Chairman. I remember when the racecourse development was granted many years ago, they said they would install an all singing, dancing biochip heating system. They came back months later saying it wasn't viable and could not afford it. They certainly took the planning committee in that evening. What was I going to say? Yeah, what would happen if they didn't put it in the my brain's going to do while we talk.
You get yourself organised, and then we'll come back to you in a minute. I'll move on to Councillor Vickers.
Chairman, I had two issues. One was the waste collection, and I think officers are expecting that one. It's basically this idea whether we could have some sort of hybrid arrangement whereby it did go through the waste stream, and we'd be giving those residents some benefit. The other is, or rather was, permeability. But can I just put the question a different way and offer a solution and get officers' opinion on that? As I said earlier in my...
But we're not into a mini debate. If it's something that you can put in later, if it's a question, we can get that out the way.
It is a question, but wouldn't the officers agree that it's not just permeability per se, but actually achieving what are the desire lines through the site for real journeys by pedestrians to specific destinations, i.e. to go further east for employment purposes to Bear Lane, or to go to enjoy a concert at the Corn Exchange. I mean, the routes are there, and would it be possible to have within the condition some arrangement whereby the gates were closed at a certain time? So they were open during the day, like the whole of Market Street is now, and in fact 24/7. Sorry, not Market Street, Parkway. But now you've got the Kennet Centre open during the day. Couldn't we maintain that arrangement? Because the concerns about crime are really for nighttime, after hours.
Thank you. Mrs. Inson, I think, would like to answer this question.
Thank you, Chair. It was just really in response to your suggestion, Councillor Vickers, just referring back to Bob's suggestion about Mr. Dre's suggestion about condition 39, which is for a security strategy. So as part of that, when they submit that, there could be details in there in terms of the opening, when the gates will be open and when they'll be closed. So we could look at that within that condition when that security management access and security plan is submitted as part of that condition.
Happy that, Chairman, because looking at individual details is necessary. You couldn't decide that on the night. It's an agreement to move in that direction I was seeking for, and whether that was going to be possible.
Mr. Dry, Mrs. Inton, how can we cover this? Should it be a condition at the end? Are we noting these additional?
There is actually the condition 39.
Okay.
Does actually that requires the access and security plan.
Thank you.
So when that's submitted, we can ensure within that plan that it's specified when gates are opened and when they're closed, etc. So we don't need an additional condition. We can do that within that condition.
Thank you for that, Councillor.
Would that perhaps enable us to actually improve the design? Because as Mr. Hague said, he's disappointed that he's lost quite a lot of the, if you like, the conservation, the look and feel through complying with the design condition that
Thank you. Bring that up in the
Yeah.
debate as well. Have you another question?
Well, it was really just this hybrid on the waste disposal. If we could have a bit more details about how that might work.
The waste officer could
More light on that just now as to whether that would be achievable or not, I'm afraid.
What we would suggest on that basis is the heads of terms for the private waste collection are robust, covering the areas that the agreement needs to cover. So I would suggest not keeping with those, but we can again note the comments and look at that detail. And if there are technical issues or something that...
So subject to discussion, negotiation, you think it's achievable? I wouldn't expect anything more tonight.
Thank you.
We can't say one way or the other, but if that's the steer, we can commit to exploring it.
Mrs. Rowe, do you want to come back?
Just to reiterate that, we can definitely explore it, but definitely can't commit to say whether it's achievable or...
Well, it's a start. It's a start of the negotiations. Well, I'm sure we'll come to a compromise. Back to Councillor Drummond. He's got himself composed.
Sorry about that. It's been 2 strokes and your brain goes a bit too like that. I was pleased to hear Mr. Hague tell us that he will put in the ground source heat pumps. Well, personally, I wouldn't like to see him out there digging big holes in the streets. Can Mr. Shepherd please tell the Plan Committee what would happen if the applicant did not install the ground source heat pumps?
Thank you, Councillor. So I'll just show you the plan on the screen. Just refer to the areas that Mr. Hague has referred to. So we've got in the centre ground source heat pumps. We've got areas within the development that are reserved for such provision. I think there's one on that section, one further ground source heat pump here next to the Catherine wheel, and one in this corner when it moves across. So we would look to secure them by the Section 106 agreement. We'd look to secure the energy statement for that. So, and we'd look to hold them accountable for that. Any shortfall would be built up from a planning obligation side of things. If in the future they weren't to deliver those, that's obviously not in accordance with the conditions or the Section 106 agreement. So we would look to enforce against that. If they were seeking to vary that at a future stage, then we'd have to look at the considerations, the arguments they put forwards. But renewable energies, solar panels, ground source heat pumps, they're becoming more and more common within development. And the race course was a number of years ago, and it's becoming second nature really for developers to include them. So I'd be pretty confident, and we'd have to obviously enforce against any non-compliance with the legal agreement.
For Mr. Back.
Yep, please.
While I support the view that Kennett centres need regeneration, global warming, as they know it, the winters are getting wetter and the summers are getting warmer. Did you take this into consideration in the decision this evening? Well, we're in zone 1 and zone 2.
Yeah, I objected to
Yeah,
this
yeah,
application.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear that again, yeah.
we do take climate change into consideration. I'm not as worried about the flood risk matters. This is part of the town which is partially protected by Newbury flood defences. And yeah, the applicant has considered climate change in their design. Despite that, they weren't able to meet all of the requirements that I would expect of a proposal of this size.
Councillor Abbs, please.
Yes, thanks very much, Chairman. First one's dead quick and easy. B&G, what percentage gain are we getting? B&G gain was mentioned, but no percentage was given. Mr. Shepherd, you mentioned that.
It will be the statutory 10%, I think.
We will get the 10%.
It's
Yeah,
a legal
10%.
requirement that you have to get 10%. It's a post-decision matter, so there would be.
Yeah, but it's all on site, or some of it's going to be bought off site.
We cannot govern that, so
we can't. Okay,
it has to be either on site or off site.
It's
but
10%.
I will say it's skewed the credit system, so it does encourage on site where possible. It's more expensive to go off site.
Lovely. Next one is for you, Jenny. Bins. You know the comment about the Globe bins. Now you've suddenly got some very large bins being thrown on the street. Is there anything you can give me? Anything we can help? What can we do if we suddenly got big bins on the street, which really is not going to look very nice?
I think we'll have to have another look at that. We don't do commercial waste bins in the town centre. They're done separately by whichever company
Chairman, it's our understanding that's been raised is it's related to a private arrangement, so it's not something that's a planning matter in that sense. It's Deb, do you want to explain why you researched the history?
Yeah, it's a private arrangement with the Globe that the Kennet Centre, the owners of the Kennet Centre currently have, and must appreciate it's probably been ongoing for some time now. It can be withdrawn at any time. It's not a condition. The original consent for the Kennet Centre didn't require them to provide, the Kennet Centre to provide a point for the keeping the storage of the commercial waste for the Globe.
So if there is a private agreement going on, then the planning permission doesn't affect that. That would have to be resolved separately.
Just FYI, the manager there that basically thinks there's a covenant and think that Heineken have the covenant. So we'll leave that for another time, but it does kind of show a good neighbour type issue that might be, but I'd like to come on to a little bit in a minute. If new condition in the update sheet talks about a 35k contribution to the bid, which is very nice for the bid, but I think we've already established there's going to be quite a lot of impact on business in the 20 odd that will be turfed out and around the site during constructions for up to 4 years. So can we, what's the chances of asking for a lot more than this, putting a couple of zeros on it and being good neighbours?
Is that a question for me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the original contribution was 25k, and I've recently asked for 35k to do a vinyl wrapping of vacant shop units. Maybe we could ask for more, maybe we couldn't, but this is what I was given a list of what the bid we're looking at doing and projects they had available to fund, and these were the ones that we put the fund money towards because these are the projects that they had.
So does this reflect, because I also talked to a lot of the businesses around, as you can probably tell, they say that there wasn't really any direct consultation with them on this. Is this a lack of consultation with the surrounding businesses and therefore we're not
Chairman, the
helping?
consultation on the planning application has been obviously in accordance with the legislation.
Right, so if they
and our
didn't respond on the
statement
website, hard luck, yeah?
No, well, we've done the site notice, press notice.
Yeah, right, that's fair enough.
Mrs. Instant.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, the only business surrounding the site that provided any comments, representations on the proposal was the Catherine Wheel. We haven't received, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking the business is down the Bartholomew Street mainly. And the final question I have, it will start with Mr. Goddard and really links back to a comment in our sheet here that says there's actually only 150, it's via the Newbury Society, it says only 150 spaces given over to, public access. The rest, but during your presentation, you seem to indicate that all of them are kind of first come, first serve, and away you go.
Chairman, yes, and I've had this issue with the Newbury Society before, that the multi-storey car park is available for all, first come, first serve.
Right.
So all 557 car parking spaces are available for all.
No, so even though we have a requirement to provide X number of parking spaces, we have to use, I'm sorry if I'm kind of extending, we have to use a West Berkshire managed car park. We have to effectively give that up so that we have some mixed use scenario. But then we also go on to say we're securing some extra monies to improve the railway station car park. What if it's all okay and on site and hunky dory? Why are we asking for that? Do we not need any actual provision at the railway station after all?
I think that's there as a precaution. There may be periods such as once or twice a year before Christmas where the car park could perhaps overflow.
Okay.
But I'm certainly not as concerned about it as the previous planning application. I think that's all. Anything else?
Well, no, I mean, both of us were very concerned about the previous application and its parking. I still have a concern myself, and I would like the economics officer to tackle this one for me, if that's okay. It comes down to the, what sounds like potential loss of some car parking at certain times of year. Yeah. And every car park that we lose, if we go out there and research, it basically says that it's for parking fees, it's about £1,000 to £2,000 across the UK. Newbury specifically, it seems to be £2,000 to £3,000 per bay. And in terms of retail loss, if people actually stop shopping because we made it harder for them to park and get there, it's £25,000 to £42,000.
And your question is?
So the question is, how sure, if we're having to make provision certain times of the year, because those numbers, if we lost them all and only had the 150, 7 to 12 million of loss of revenue to the town. So hence it's the economics officer. I need to be absolutely certain that I'm not going to impact the town with not an economic benefit, but actually an economic sledgehammer.
Mr. Phelan.
Thank you for your question. I'd like to pass this on to the parking to Mr. Goodard.
Okay. That's all right. I've asked him to do that. Yes. So again, the multi-storey car park has 557 car parking spaces. They did do extensive surveys, as I've mentioned, during November 22. And if we assume that the usage of the car park by retailers, by shoppers, by businesses is the same as it was then, in November 2022, there would still be 250 car parking spaces left in the multi-storey car park for the residents. Now, from the extensive surveys that we did at Bartholomew Court for the previous planning application, even on a Saturday afternoon, the residents would only require about 150 spaces. So even then, if you do the 557, 251 left, and then 150 for the residents, there's still 100 surplus from all the surveys that we undertook. So there is sufficient car parking for all usage, including retail. As I mentioned just now, the additional improvements to the Market Street car park is, in my view, a fail-safe that I think is useful. And it also spreads car parking around the town centre. The Market Street car park is ghostly at weekends. There's hardly anybody parking in it. And I think it's an advantage of having that used a bit more on the odd occasion when it may be required. So in answer to your question, there will always be sufficient car parking from the calculations we've done for retailers and for residents, even on a busy Saturday afternoon.
But Mr. Goller, I hope you don't mind me saying, but the numbers you've just used said there'll always be 100 parking spaces. So why on earth are you putting an extra floor on the parking?
That's with the extra floor in the car parking.
Yeah, but
Obviously,
if
we
you're just
didn't-
building them to be empty, what's the point?
Well, there's an extra, that's 100, that's an extra 100 spaces. If we didn't put that extra floor on, then yes, on a Saturday afternoon, most Saturday afternoons, that car park would be nearing capacity. But with that extra floor, that extra 100, there is 100 surplus there. But there may be occasions throughout the year, such as some Saturdays before Christmas, when perhaps that car park may be a bit more occupied than usual. And on that case, we have an additional fail-safe mechanism that Market Street can be used. So this was a big concern last time, and obviously the applicants and ourselves have done more work to make sure that the equation is much better, even perhaps in a surplus than what we had last time.
No, indeed. And last time, but I think we discussed it, this business of measuring November, which is probably the quietest possible month you could measure for a parking. But I mean, if you'd said December and, you know, the weekend before Christmas, I think you'd be at the maximum. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. If you're absolutely convinced that there will be no fiscal impact after the development is finished, negative impact.
I think that's the answer he's given.
Well, but
I'd like to move on now.
But if I may, I just haven't heard the bit about what happens during construction and demolition and construction. Are we saying there's no impact on the parking during that period, which is obviously 4 years, so it's a long time?
The multi-storey car park, I think a lot of this is down to the construction management plan, which is secured by condition. But we are assuming that the multi-storey car park, the usage of it will continue as is during construction. There will be some inconvenience. They may need to close some of it off because they are providing an extra floor. But mostly, I would expect that car park to continue to be used as normal. And if it isn't, then once again, we could provide temporary signage to direct people to Market Street during construction at times, particularly at weekends, considering that car park is mainly empty at weekends.
Okay, that's the surety I was looking for. Thank
yes.
You.
Thank you for your questions, Councillor Rose, and thank you for your answers, Mr. Goddard. Hot seat tonight. We now move on. Councillor Foote, please.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. My question is to Mr. Bacchus. Obviously, you've already highlighted that you object to this application, and I think if I read it correctly, it's predominantly on the sustainable drainage aspect. And my question is that as we speak at the moment, the Kennet Centre doesn't really have any sustainable drainage at all. And this development, if, for example, we have permeable surfaces for footways and maybe driveways as well, we've got trees, we've got, I think there's like a roof garden. It seems to me that there is a lot more sustainable drainage systems that are being put in. But I think you had an issue with the flow rates. And I just wondered if you could tell the committee, just clarify for the committee, what your objections were on that. Thanks.
Yeah, so whenever you have a brownfield development or any kind of development, we typically require that development to discharge surface water runoff from the site at a gold standard, which is the greenfield runoff rate for the 1 in 1 year event. That means what the site would do if it was natural and water was just shedding from that site. We do accept that with brownfield sites, that's often very, very challenging because there's already been, existing development there. That site is already discharging at an uncontrolled rate because water is just shedding off a hard standing surface. So we then have relaxations for that gold standard. There were problems with previous iterations of this proposal with regards to the discharge rate. And we had flagged up what we would consider an acceptable compromise. However, we found that with this new submission, the applicant had disregarded that advice, despite having flexibility with the site layout and where they can put buildings and where they could maximize attenuation. They still failed to hit that target rate. In addition to that, new national standards have come out which have actually clarified the matter, because this was quite a subjective thing previously. The councils were almost left to determine what an acceptable rate from a brownfield site might be. However, the new standards have said that you should, at the maximum, you should really relax. The rate to is 5 times the greenfield runoff rate. The applicant has failed to hit that target. They also failed to hit the target which we set out previously. So I was quite disappointed with that. I do accept that the SUDs which they are proposing will provide a betterment over what is already there. The site will not increase flood risk. The rates leaving that site, the runoff rates leaving that site, will not be an increase on the runoff rates that are currently leaving that site. However, I do think that should not be, I do think that they should still be aiming to meet basic requirements. And I am frustrated that heritage and other elements have trumped what is, I believe, a technical requirement here. I also think that I have also explained in my response that I do have concerns about the buildability of the SUDS features which they proposed and the constructability of the SUDS features which they've proposed, because the applicant has only given us a very high-level design. Now, I do, in other outline applications or other major applications, we do accept quite a high-level design, but we expect them to meet the baseline requirements so that we can then condition it. They haven't met the baseline requirements. So my concern now is that I have a very high-level concept design which doesn't even meet the bare minimum of what I'd expect, and everything is subject to change. In my response, I highlighted one of the drawing notes which they provided. So I'll just repeat it. Drainage strategy and surface discharge rates are subject to agreement with the LFA and Thames Water. Well, we don't agree those. The surface water network shown is indicative only. The layout of pipework, chambers and SUDS features will be determined when more detailed architectural and landscape information becomes available at the next design stage. So everything is subject to change. Proposed levels are shown indicatively and pending full level strategy. So I don't know how constructible or how buildable the actual design put forward is. Further coordination is required between proposed location of the tanks and the proposed foundations of the buildings. There is a problem when you use geocellular attenuation tanks for attenuation storage, which is what's being proposed across the layout of the site. I don't know what type of foundations they're using. I think that having spoken to the applicants, they mentioned they might be using pile foundations. So this might be a null problem. But if there are pad foundations, you can't have those geocellular tanks too close to them, which means that they would have to reduce the capacity of the attenuation storage, which is a concern for me at the next design stage. They haven't fixed the channel drains, slot drains, gully locations, any of the downpipes. Maintenance chambers, jetting points and vent pipes are also to be considered the next design stage. So you get the picture. I'm a little bit concerned that nothing has been fixed at this stage. I've tried to put as many conditions as possible. I've tried to suggest as many conditions as possible to address the blanks to my colleague, but ultimately I'm objecting to this because there's too much uncertainty from my perspective.
Thank you. You'd like to go on the list. Next, we have Councillor Bennyworth.
Thank you very much, Chairman. If I can come back, please, to the Waste Management Officer, Jenny Ray. What examples do we have in the district of private waste collection in a sizable development such as this, and any issues that sort of may arise?
Thank you. So we've only got one location that has private waste collections at the moment, which is Old Rain Close in Calcott. It's nothing like this scale, so it's only got 23 properties in it. It's not something that could be resolved. So again, it was subject to a Section 106 agreement. We haven't had any issues. Private waste collections are running. I guess the only thing for us is a bit like that was commented before. It's residents contributing towards it in the council tax and then feeling like they're double paying. So those are the sort of queries that we then that we then get from residents.
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Gaines.
I was actually going to ask Mr. Backus how concerned he was about drainage, but I think I understand how concerned he is about drainage. So my question's been answered, Chairman.
Councillor Amtharaj.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, just a question to Mr. Dre or Mrs. Inston. Considering the massive scale of this project will go on for a number of years, would there be an impact to during the construction hours, during Monday to Fridays and Saturdays, to the market, Saturday markets and other events in the market street? And on a very broad level, there are several conditions, 21, 24 and 11 and the construction management plan. Considering again the massive scale of this project, would it be possible for officers to consider that the construction management plan, when it comes up with all these details and impacts, for us as a committee to consider? Because I understand with this, if this goes for approval, there would be no major chance for us as councillors and public to scrutinize that one. So that's number one question. And the other one is another important topic, which is close to me as well, the maintenance of the public open space. Again, it's been mentioned, and there is a public management company, and there will be all fees and all the stuff, which I totally understand. But would there be a possibility for officers to put in conditions if we propose that down the line the the service management role would be taken over by the residents association if they form one, so they can determine how much of they want to pay? Because we've heard number of places where this service charge. So I don't want to go into that debate. So question to specifically officers, would there be okay for them to consider those conditions? And finally, my question is, we talked about heritage and all this trends. Considering the population increase, roughly average 600 to 700 occupants or residents, what's the impact on school and medical infrastructure? Or they would be able to accommodate that one, the existing school and health infrastructure is able to accommodate that one? So those are the questions, Simon.
Thank you. Are we clear on those three questions? You've noted them. We can answer them consecutively. Thank you.
On the construction impact, obviously any construction is going to have an impact, but we can use the conditions for the construction traffic management plan to make sure that's the minimum. And obviously that'll be done heavily in consultation with highways. So obviously things like the market and that would be factored into that, and making sure development's phased in a way that we can keep the town open as much as possible, as feasibly possible during construction. But so yes, in that respect, I think. And in terms of bringing it to committee, we can refer it to committee when that condition comes forward. In terms of the open space that's normally covered by the Section 106, do you have the answer, or do you want to?
I can answer the question about the service management organisation for the site, and whether or not we can condition it to be passed to the residents in the future. Unfortunately, the estate charges and service management arrangements are a private matter between the owners and the occupiers, and they're covered by property law and consumer law rather than planning law. So it's not something we can control as a planning authority. We can't put a condition in to require them at some future point to pass the management onto a residents association. I mean, if they do that, that's great, but unfortunately we can't require that as a planning condition. With regards to contribute schools and medical facilities, we have obviously the SIL payment will be going towards services such as that. We haven't, on this occasion, we haven't received any response from the Integrated Care Board requesting any money on this occasion. So it will be the normal SIL payments that will go towards those services. Hopefully that's answered your question, Councillor Mithraj.
Thank you, Chairman. That answers.
Thank you. Councillor Vickers is next, but if you will just bear with me, Councillor Vickers, while the discussion is still reasonably warm with regard to Mr. Backus's concerns, I asked a question of the officers, Mr. Dre and Mrs. Inston, is there anything that this committee can impose as a condition that have been pointed out by Mr. Bacchus to somewhat relieve his concerns that what he has suggested is tied into the conditions that will take place, and therefore alleviates some of these concerns that we've got here, and tie the applicant in? Although at the moment he seems to have disregarded the advice, whether we can tie him entirely. I don't know what the situation is, but I asked the question.
So obviously, respect the SUD's position on this, and the condition that's before you, 40, has been drafted in consultation with Mr. Bacchus to make sure it's as robust as possible. And I can't find the right part in it, but it does say there about maximising the part.
So, Mr. Bacchus,
we've done our best to try and condition it. My concern is that the proposal put forward is just fundamentally might not be buildable. So it doesn't matter if it's conditioned. We'll get to a stage, because I've had this with other applications. We get to a stage where
okay. Well, I move slightly more forward then, as there are additional conditions that can be put on to alleviate that concern.
I think we're content that the conditions.
I'm trying to knock a rough stone a bit smoother, if you see what I mean, knock the edges off here. We seem to have got a condition where we've got Mr. Bacchus reasonably happy, but he's still got a concern. Is there anything we can do to alleviate or minimise that concern with a condition?
I don't think there are any, because that's quite a detailed SUDS condition we've got in there at the moment. And so obviously, I don't think it's not my professional opinion that you'd be able to put.
Okay, that's fine. But I just asked the question. I'm just trying to smooth the way. Okay.
Well, it was on that area, and my question was very simple. I've heard Mr. Bacchus's concerns, but would he agree with me that assuming it is buildable, there's no way that what we could end up with is worse in terms of surface water drainage, surely, than what we've got now? And I think that was mentioned at some stage in the presentations that we've heard. So understanding the difficulties of ensuring that it's buildable, would you agree, Mr. Bacchus, that you can't envisage things being worse than they are now?
Even if you disregarded half of the requirements for, development with respect to SUDS and drainage, it would still be better than what's there now. The fact is that the building probably doesn't have very good functioning drainage. I have walked around the site with the developer, and I don't think half of those chambers in there have been opened since the building was put up. So anything is better than what we have right now. So yes, I do agree with you.
Yeah, and so that's the crux of the planner's balance in this matter, is that given that there's betterment, we accept that there's shortcomings compared to especially the new standards that have come out during the course of this application. But I think we've gone as far as we can go with current design. And on that basis, that's why we have taken it to the planning balance.
Mr. Bacchus, can you add to that?
Yeah, I did want to add, because I appreciate you're all hearing me, and you're probably hearing my frustrations. And I do think, as I've tried to make it clear in my response to the officer, that there are benefits. One of the only ways in which they could, in my view, meet the discharge requirement with the layout they have presented today would be to use a pumping station, which is a far less desirable solution. And I did agree that with the developer at the time. So I would rather have this and then miss the discharge requirement than then hit the discharge requirement and implement a pumping station.
Thank you. You did mention chamber. It came to mind, I'd been, not in this authority, but in others, where estates have had storage chambers or tanks where the surface water goes into to hold that water back and then pump it out at a later time. Not saying it's a condition we can add or whatever, but is it a possibility?
No, what I'm trying to say is they have maximize the space available with attenuation storage. I'm not sure how buildable that attenuation storage is. So it's already holding back lots of water.
Oh.
It's already got lots of tanks in there. I'm just worried that they might not be constructible.
Thank you. Councillor Foot.
Thank you, Chair. You've asked my supplementary question yourself, so thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Page 42, housing mix, 11.7. I'd like clarification here, because clearly it states that there's been not provide sufficient justification to depart from policy. So I'd just like, are we really saying that SP15, which is really just been approved, we should be ignoring? Because that's not, the housing mix is way out of whack. And anybody that's talked to any estate agent around here, especially with the last application when there was even more of it, said, do we need any more one-bedroom houses or homes? And the answer was no, no, no. We want some family homes. But this one is massively over on the one-bedroom contribution. So, I mean, why is that not, that's not affordable housing even, that's the housing mix.
So I refer to 11.7 of the report, and that explains our consideration for the housing mix. So the surrounding area comprises smaller housing, suggesting the proposed mixed put forward would be suitable for the site's size and location. Viability appears to be a key consideration. Smaller units are among effective ways to achieve satisfactory density. We're looking for high density in the town centre. We're looking for high density to achieve a viable development. That is a reasonable prospect for a developer to bring forward. So these all support the mix that's been represented as efficient use of the land that we have. We don't think there's a sufficiently skewed mix there, and there are considerations that would allow us to consider a different mix that's smaller, that might produce a more viable development, that would be an attractive prospect on a highly constrained brownfield site. We've considered the policy, we've considered the allowance policy makes for moving away from what is prescribed in the policy, and we feel it's appropriate to accept what's been put forward.
So I'm sorry, Mr. Shepherd, I'm confused because it says, however, the application does not provide sufficient justification for departing from policy, blah, blah, blah. And as a result, the proposals are considered to conflict with policy SB15, which carries. And you're using the same paragraph to say, oh, that's our reasoning for saying it's okay.
So the paragraph sets out, there's two processes to this. The first section that we've written is our assessment of it. The second section is what's been put forward within the planning statements by the applicants. There is a conflict there because we don't meet the policy, but there are considerations why a deviation away from the policy might be appropriate.
So it's a balanced thing for you then, really.
It's a case that we've looked at it, we've looked at what they're proposing, and we see that it is not in conflict, but we also see the constraints and the wider picture. So yes, it's a balancing thing.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just come back to the retail? I have to say, I'm really quite surprised there's even 20 viable units in the Kennet Centre. Last time I walked through, it was virtually empty. But have we done any studies as to the availability of units within Parkway and Northbrook Street, which could take those tenants that are there for economic development?
Thank you for your question. Yes, so there was a vacant unit information study done in August 2025, which shows that there are currently 41 vacant units compared to the 49 vacant units that are previously outlined within the town centre. Of those 41, 15 are currently under construction and offer. So there is an availability of vacant units within the town centre currently. We've not done any engagement with the businesses in the Kennet Centre, as it's not our current, well, it's not within my role, it's for the businesses to decide that. So yeah, there is a current amount of vacant units within the town centre and available space.
Thank you.
Councillor Vickers.
Returning to the parking, it just occurred to me that we have HSA DPT, the Housing Site Allocations Development Plan Document Policy P1. I'm assuming that this whole site is covered by that. In other words, none of the residents in this development will ever be entitled to a residence parking permit. So there's certainly going to be no, effect on surrounding streets. Is that right?
Chairman, that is correct.
Well, the policy,
the policy has been applied.
Yeah, the HSA DPT has obviously been superseded, but essentially the same policy is now DM44. Just
one last very simple question from me, Mr. Goddard. You can in a minute, yeah. We've talked about waste vehicles, we've talked about lorries and all the rest of it. Very simple question, how do you move in? Was it white van man?
That's a good question, but the fire appliances are 10.8 metres long in sewer refuse vehicles. And they can get to much of the site. I'd imagine when people move in, some furniture would have to be carried some distances, or removal firms would have to use appropriate vehicles, knowing that where the flats are within the site.
Well done, Mr. Garland. Very good answer. Now then, Councillor Drummond, lastly, hopefully.
Thank you. Mr. Goddard. Page 13, partial objections. No concerns raised. Traffic expected to be less than historic levels from the Kennett Centre. This begs the question, does that count the traffic using Parkway Underground or not, as this traffic still comes into Newbury?
Chairman, what we did with the previous planning application and this one is we used the area-wide VISIM traffic model. So that was based on traffic surveys on the network just before the COVID pandemic. So all traffic, including Parkway, would have all been included in those assessments.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Members, is that all of our questions to officers? I think it is. We've been... No, is it a question? We've been sitting now for 2.5 hours. I wondered if everyone in the chamber might like a comfort break, stretch your legs, and a glass of water. Thank you. Shall we say 10 minutes back here at 22 just gone? Thank you. We are now at that part of the meeting where we have the debate and discuss this application. But before we do, if I could please ask members during the debate to keep your contribution short and precise and try not to duplicate what's been said previously. Maybe a lot to discuss tonight, so if we can keep it short and sharp, I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much. So the issues, just to concentrate your minds on what we're looking at here this evening. So the issues of consideration of this application are the principles of the development, the housing type and mix, the design, character and appearance, impact on heritage assets, impact on neighbouring amenity for future occupiers, affordable housing, highway matters, flooding and drainage, sustainable construction, economic development, waste management, and then at the end, we've got the planning obligation of the S106. So who'd like to start the debate, please? Thank you, Councillor Abbs.
No worries at all. Yeah, I am surprised that the application has so many objections that can be made to it. But I guess that's mainly because I was quite relieved, I suppose, in the end that the previous application didn't go forward. So I haven't made a final decision yet, but some of the things that really concern me are the economics of how this will impact the town, which is why I was asking so many questions about exactly the impact of the parking situation of the businesses around. I think I'm satisfied on the parking front, but I've remained pretty unsure in terms of how this will be a good neighbour to everybody else that's in town. And whereas I can definitely see economic benefits to having more residents in town, I also see quite a lot of negatives in terms of how we're going to end up splitting the town in two. Which is going to happen for sure, because at the moment, from the train station to the first units in this development, retail units in this development, it's about 400 metres walk. It looks like we're not going to need that. At least that's what Mr. Goddard's indicated. So that's why I think I'm okay with it. But if we do need it, we know we are looking at a big impact, and we are looking at a big impact on existing business for years to come. That access build plan that goes on during the construction, if that's not spot on, we will have killed half the town, and eventually we might get one back. But I don't have a magic ball, so what the town will need in 4 years' time, if I follow what's said in the press, it's not going to look anything like what it is today, and it's going to be a lot more retail than leisure than it is retail. If that's where we're going, then what we're approving has a lack of it. Also, what we're being asked to approve has a terrible housing mix. If I compare what's been being asked for by local estate agents, etc. So all the time, whereas I can see benefits, I can also see an awful lot of things that are not going to be great for the town. So I don't want to kind of come think, oh, this is a slam dunk, we can definitely approve this one because everything will be hunky-dory. It won't. And I'm going to say I haven't got a crystal ball, but I'm really worried, and I hope some other members will have a bit more solace for me. I'll be honest, I am leaning towards giving approval on this, but I would like to suggest some extra conditions if that were the way that it goes, because I think there's more, despite Mr. Bacchus's huge note that he's made. I don't think I've ever seen one longer than that one. There's still other things that I think we need to add to be sure that we're not going to impact the town too much.
Thank you, Councillor Abbs. As we know, no application is perfect, and that's for us as a committee to sum up the pros and the cons. And we're all experienced. All you guys now have been on this committee for quite a few years, and I great confidence at the end of the day we'll sift through and we'll come to a conclusion. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I respect Councillor Abbs's views as a businessman, and his office is closer to the site that we're talking about than my home, but I think I'm the one that lives closest to this area. So this is kind of my neighbourhood we're talking about. And that's the way I've approached it ever since the applicant put in his first application. You won't be surprised, since I supported the Eagle Quarter on balance, that I have no problems with the conservation aspects or even the height of this, although I appreciate that it's not as low down and suitable for many local people, particularly the Newbury Society and the Town Council. But just going through 5 points very quickly. We haven't mentioned policy DM7 and the condition 49 in our, but I was very pleased that we are reducing the maximum water that residents will be allowed, because that will help reduce the load on foul water sewage. And we haven't really talked about foul water. I mean, Thames Water almost never say that they object to an application because they're looking at the charges that are going to collect from the residents. And we haven't heard much from officers about that, but that's just something I wanted to mention, a reduced load on the foul water drains, which have all got to end up down at Lower Way, of course, via Faraday Road. I've got no concerns about parking at all. A lot of the parking that the Market Street development multi-storey is built for was for office workers. The reduction in office workers is not going to reverse. And I don't think the retail is going to pick up much. I think the future of the town centre is for service sector, whether it's coffee or nail bars and those sorts of things, because you can't do that online, but you can shop online. And you can even view the things you're going to buy online and then do click and collect, which doesn't involve a very long visit for parking. The only issues I've really got, you've heard me in the questions, are about the permeability, and we've heard that can be looked at. And we've heard that the issues about waste management can also be looked at. And on both cases, we've heard that the applicant is open to relaxing the conditions that consultees have imposed upon us. And the only other thing I will point out, which came up during the questions, is that we've got the Leasehold Reform Act, and we've got it stated here that every resident will be a member of the management company by right. And so if they're not happy with the way the management company is performing, they will have the right to vote to actually take over the management company directly under the legislation. And I've worked with that on a development in Newbury successfully, where you had an absentee landlord and an absentee management company. But let's hope we don't get to that. So I can't see a reason to refuse, although I accept that that is balanced and there are things we lose, particularly the affordable housing. So that's my statement, and I come back and hope we vote soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Amathoraj.
Thank you, Chairman. We know this is a massive development, and it will change the face of Newbury, our beloved Newbury, for the next, not just 4 or 5 years or 10 years, for the next 100 years. So what we are looking at as a committee, as a group, is that what is best for that Kennet redevelopment. And this is, I think, from the other proposal from the last time and now, and what I have to commend the applicant as well. They put in a lot of effort in convincing the public as well, and that's we can see from the number of support or no objections. So overall, this is a very good development I can see, but there are flaws in it, and that is where we need to address through conditions and to make sure that those conditions are kept, particularly on the permeability or the access, because I want to see a Newbury development with access to public, cyclists, pedestrians. I want to see a development where it kinds of managed by the residents, not by a company, which is not going to be based even in UK. It could be run by any other organization outside of this country as well. So there's a lot of flaws in it. But here we are looking at an application where will it benefit the residents of Newbury? Will it benefit the town? And I can see that is there, definitely. And that is my request to the officers previously in my questions, that can we come back to the construction management plan? And the answer was yes, because for the next 4 or 5 years, if there is going to be impact to the market, Saturday market or the farmers market, that is where we need to, as a council group, to look into that and mitigate those impact. So overall, I would say, yes, I would support if anyone is willing to propose, and then the conditions we discussed are taken into account. But thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gaines.
Thank you, Chairman. I think for whatever reason, currently the Kennet Centre is divorced from the rest of the town. I think that gap between the other parts of the town and the Kennet Centre is already there. I do think that Bartholomew Street has started to be regenerated, which is great. There's not new businesses opening up there, so I think that area will start to do that. And I think this application, if we minded to approve it, will actually enhance that rather than actually make it more divorced from the rest of the town. I am concerned about the affordable housing. I think everybody is. I think we've heard that, and we will hear that continually, because I think we do need affordable housing in West Berkshire, and a sustainable site like the centre of town would be an absolutely perfect place for it. I do have some concerns about housing mix. I noticed I put some figures in, and I think 34% of 1 bedroom above what we actually require as SP15. So that is a concern. But the applicant must have done their own homework in order to make that site viable. So if they're confident that's okay, then that's fine. I do have some concern about drainage. I've never heard Mr. Backus be quite so forceful in his appraisal of an application. So I'm concerned about that. However, I like the structure and design. I think it's a fantastic structure and design. I like the way the streets work out. I like the greenery of the greening of that area as well. We don't have much greenery in that area, and I think that is actually a very positive thing. And as I say, I think Bartholomew Street starting to be regenerated will only enhance that this application, should we be minded to support it. And I am minded to support it, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bennyworth.
Thank you, Chairman. Without wishing to state the obvious, I'll state the obvious. This is a vital part of the town and therefore the district, but it has to work harder for its supper. It's a sad remnant of what it once was, and doing nothing isn't clearly an option. Whilst I understand the relevant officers' concerns, notably SUDS, refuse collection, and of course affordable housing, Councillor Gaines quite agree with that. But the overall improvement of this application in comparison to the previous one is, in my opinion, it's a vast improvement, and I will be minded to approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you, Chairman. Retail has changed. We've now got retail parks, which when I was there last week was absolutely heaving. And most town centres are going through a process of concentrating their retail down, which is what we've got to do. So we have a really vibrant Northbrook Street and Parkway, and some artisan type shops, perhaps up Bartholomew Street, probably. I agree with what Councillor Miller said. Doing nothing is not an option. That shopping centre is dead. And I supported the Eagle Quarter application, as you probably recall, thinking at the time it was the best we'd ever get. And I was wrong. This is probably the best we'll ever get. I would like, therefore, if you don't mind, Chairman, to recommend that we accept officers' recommendations with obviously some conditions.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. I think obviously listening to everything tonight has been very informative, but also in our papers, the Newbury Society have broadly speaking, with some concerns, said that this scheme is a much greater improvement on Eagle Quarter, which frankly was not popular. Clearly, there are still some buildings that are quite high. But I think another thing that is laudable with this application is the degree of care, if you like, that the developer has gone to in designing the building. So there is a useful mix. There have been some very good compliments paid by architects and town planners about this development. And again, with great respect to my colleague Adrian Abbs, I think this, if it is built out in the right sort of way, as we've seen on these plans, this could be an attraction for Newbury. It'll bring people in, I think, and it will enhance a conservation area, which we have fought very hard to protect. Yes, rare that they are, I think this is a scheme that will enhance the conservation area. And again, I'm minded to support this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Drummond.
Yeah, I mean, I would support most of what my fellow councillors have said. I would just like to think what my 4 grandchildren and their children would think of this in maybe 60, 70 years. Would they like it? I'm not so sure they would, but it's the best we've got. It's been said we've got. The other application was just a blot in the landscape. This is better. But I'm sort of minded to support it, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I have a proposer. I am looking for a second. I see Councillor Vickers' hand goes up.
I'd be delighted to second it. I probably didn't phrase it enough in my earlier remarks, but I'm really delighted with it. I also, like you, Councillor Williston, felt a little bit ashamed that I had voted for something thinking it was the best we'd get. And within a few days, I was proved wrong.
Thank you, Chairman. A question to Councillor Williston, because are you happy to accept those conditions which we've discussed and officers taken note to include in your proposal? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, members. So before I put this to vote, Mrs. Armour.
I think 2 things. One is Councillor Abbs would like to say something, and secondly, I think it would be a good idea if Mr. Dray just confirmed what the proposal actually is, so members are very clear what they're voting for.
That was my next statement. Can you please confirm any conditions that you've picked up over and above those that are in the agenda? Mr. Dray. Well, did you want Mr. Abbs? Are you inviting Mr. Abbs?
I didn't know what was going to be said.
I did say in the opening that, if it minded to approve that, I'd like to add some conditions. So if that's at all possible, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, everybody, we can do that now, can we not?
We're at that phase.
Well, it's subject to what the proposer and the seconder said.
They obviously need to approve whatever I say. That's not...
We normally do these conditions before the proposer or during the debate. It's now with Councillor Wollaston and Vickers whether you agree with these conditions that are going to be put by Councillor Abbs.
Well, I won't know whether I agree with them until I hear them.
Exactly.
You might not have any conditions yet.
Well, I mean, I'd like to hear what Mr. Dray has already, and then if Councillor Abbs has some additions or changes, let's hear them in that order, I think.
Conditions agreed already, please, and then we'll see if Councillor Abbs has any to add to that.
Well, members, all of the conditions in the recommendation are listed from page, if I can get there, 69. So if you want to peruse those. The comments regarding permeability and the secure by design, that is condition. Bear with me. 39 on page 82. It's already written that details have to be submitted to us for approval. So obviously there's been discussion about which precise ones could be closed up, but that does allow for flexibility already. So I don't actually think you need to change the wording of the condition to allow for that. We could obviously note the steer from committee that there's a preference towards maximising permeability.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that one could come back for approval as well, because it does affect quite a large number of people, as I say, who live in the neighbourhood or regularly use routes that currently go through the site and say the early mornings on the way to work and this sort of thing.
Okay, noted.
Chairman,
I'll come back in a minute.
And I noted too, obviously, the construction traffic management plan, the same, we would refer it to committee. Obviously, waste was discussed earlier, not just in the proposal, but there's a preference for the precise arrangements. Like I mentioned earlier, I think I would recommend you keep the heads of terms we've set out the same, because they cover all of the bases of the things that we need the framework to cover. And in reality, that detail, you wouldn't have a provider on board necessarily when you're negotiating the 106. You'd set the terms that provider's going to have to meet. So again, I would suggest keep the terms the same, but we all note the steer, and there may be specific matters with the waste scheme that we can't advise you on now. So we note the steer, but we'll explore it. But yeah, so that's all I've noted so far. Obviously, there's a lot of conditions just to list out. You've obviously got them in the report. Happy to answer any more questions.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Councillor Amathraj, you had quite a few issues. I just want to make sure they've been encapsulated, or that you've got something else you'd just like to bring to our attention.
Just a quick point on this. I'm not adding new conditions. Question to Mr. Dre. The condition 39 talks about site access controls or controls in specific. What I think I and Councillor Vickers and others are coming from is, can we add condition to see what more can be provided to expand that access, expand that permeability, so we can review when such measures are coming through from the applicant, on the officers as well.
I think particularly it was hours in which it's permeable, whether there could be a time when, no public access is allowed because of the noise that people passing through would make and that sort of thing.
So we could add to the part where it says about site access controls to include details of the hours. Yes, if that's answers.
You're happy with that? A lot of worry about drainage. I think I've discussed this briefly, I think, with Mr. Shepherd. There's nothing extra, I think, is there, Mr. Dre, that we can add with regards to...
We've obviously discussed the condition with Mr. Backus in detail and made it as robust as it possibly can be. And it does look to it's worded to maximise
we're all happy with that
to the best we can do. So we think we can't recommend any changes to you on that.
No, okay, thank you. Back to Councillor Abbs, I think, for his contribution.
Yeah, thanks very much. I see 49 conditions in total at the moment, unless I've missed something, Bob. Okay. So there's quite a few. Well, it's numbered, fortunately, for us.
Sorry, the update report as well.
That was the number 49. Yeah. So otherwise it would have been 48. But the one thing you've probably heard me say time again is basically the economic impact and how concerned I am. The heads of term actually does talk about addressing that. So we're clearly able to do some things slightly outside the red line because the bid is mentioned here and £35,000 to do it. And that's not within the red line because it's talking about wrapping empty buildings and this and that and the other. So I really would like to see something that looks, especially down Bartholomew Street. If you've walked down there from the Coat and Bear now, and a few other places have opened up, that's turned into, or is starting to turn into, something that was developing. It's going to be put on pause with this. So at least can we have a condition that if we can't, that we at least board the damn thing as prettily as we can and keep it as nice an access as possible. So in other words, when we say, yes, there's your construction thing, can we have a condition that says, by the way, erect something that shields the site to make it not look like a building site, but actually something that's accessible to the pedestrians who'll still be walking down from the car park.
Do you mean like the kind of hoarding you get around construction sites?
Something
like on a mock facade and that kind of things. Yeah, that's actually covered in this construction method statement.
It's in this construction method. Okay, then that won't require a condition then, will it? Right.
So double check. It normally is.
So the other thing that's missing is that is within is obviously we do have 20 tenants being end of leased. Can we not have a condition that at least helps them find new accommodation? I mean, at least set up something for them, because it's it says they have standard leases. They're just on short-term.
Regrettably, it's not a planning matter, so it's not something that we can
advisory requests for anything that we can put in there that encourages the developer to be a good neighbour. Especially, I'm thinking of the Globe, especially. Whereas, I found out tonight the bins are out on the street. Which affects us all, actually.
I say we can only cover the planning issues. Obviously, there are wider impacts, legal arrangements, all those sorts of things that the development needs to resolve, but we can only focus on the.
So we can't make any requests. You can't increase the heads of terms amount to cover some additional things. I can't look behind me. I haven't got a house in the back of my head, but is Deborah saying no?
Not that we can identify.
Screen. She's shaking her head, so it looks like a no.
Not that we can identify, I'm afraid.
Right. Well, that's very disappointing.
You've done your best. Councillor Vickers, very
Yeah,
quickly.
just building on what Councillor Abb said about, making Bartholomew Street attractive during the construction phase. It would be really nice for such an important town centre site if, and I don't know whether this can be included in a construction method statement or what, if we could have viewing places, public viewing, so that although it's boarded off, hoardings, that you can actually look in and see what's going on in the site. Maybe it's because I had background in the building industry, but there might be some really interesting archaeology, interesting construction methods going on. It's, I think, a good idea that the public see how you build a development like this. I don't know whether that can be included somewhere.
Yeah, that can be
Viewing
covered off in
windows
the
in the
construction
hoarding.
method statement. So I've noted that we'll add decorative hoarding, is lack of a better word, and viewing facilities.
Mr. Dre, it's already covered in 29D, the erection and maintenance of security holding, including decorative displays, facilities for public viewing on page 79.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to draw a close now. I think we're all quite happy with the conditions that we've contributed, and the 59 or 49, whatever it is, already in the document plus. So I do have a proposer, Councillor Wollaston. I do have a seconder, Councillor Vickers, and the vote is for this application number 25/00391/full Madge. I won't go through the whole planning permission, but I will say that if this is approved, it is provided that a Section 106 agreement has been completed within 6 months or such longer period that may be authorised by the development manager in consultation with the chairman or vice chairman of this committee to delegate to the development manager to grant planning permission subject to the conditions listed in section 8 of the report before us, or minor and inconsequential amendments to those conditions authorised by the development manager in consultation with the chairman or vice chairman of the Western Area Planning Committee, or if the Section 106 legal agreement is not completed, to delegate to the development manager to refuse the planning application for the reasons listed in the report before us. Mrs. Armour, would you please conduct the vote?
Yeah. So those for approval or for officer's recommendation? Can you raise your hands? Okay. Those against? Okay. So that's carried then.
The application is approved. Well done. We all look forward to the next phase, and eventually we'll see some excavations going on, and maybe you'll take the planning committee round to view the finished article when it's all over. Congratulations to you all tonight. Thank you. And members, thank you very much for a very good debate.
Thanks, Chairman.
And I will await Mr. Chiverton's advice, and if you just sit still until the Zoom meeting is closed. Thank you.
Yeah, it's closed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Good night, everyone, and drive carefully home.